What is happening out there, Rotoscouts baseball fans? Good afternoon, gang. Good morning, depending on where in the world you're tuning in from. Early one today, a couple minutes after high noon. I guess that's how you survive a gunfight. You show up a few minutes late for high noon. What can they do? Maybe you show up and just shoot the guy in the back. Who knows? Early show today, a little bit out of necessity. They're doing some work around the house as they were last week, and I think they're teed up to be working right outside my office windows a little bit later this afternoon. So I figured I might as well just jump on early in case they're drilling into this wall or whatever. We won't have noise. We won't have distractions. Hopefully pick up some new views, some additional views along the way as well. A couple more hours of just having the content sitting on YouTube couldn't hurt. Appreciate everybody recently. We've been doing some good numbers as far as views and new viewers and watch time and all that fun stuff. Love to amp up the clicks, the likes a little bit more if you guys get a chance. Subscribe to the channel, pump those subscriptions up. And if you get a chance after the show, when we're talking about like 2 hours from now, you guys know how we do. But after the show, pop back in, leave a comment on the video if you get a chance. It does drive the algorithm a little bit for us. Really does help. A couple people in the chat already. Cujo was here bright and early before noon. Daniel Pope just got in. What's up, brother? All over the mini-max last night, but sadly didn't finish first, but still a profitable day. Love to hear it. Good job. Beyond the rabbit hole. What's going on, man? Wayne Stark. I'll be logged in every time. I appreciate you too, bud. Daniel Pope says needed more from late hitters in extra innings last night. Yeah, I mean, how about that ridiculous game in Vegas? We talked about that one, but 29 runs scored. What was it? 9 home runs were hit. Difficult to quantify what that really looks like, what the impact of the ballpark versus just, getting after those pitchers look like, and, how we handle that going forward. But that run total has gone up for today. We've got 2 absurd launching pads on the slate today like that. That one coming back again. 12.5 run total at Coors and a 13 run total in that game. So really interesting spots, but we could see that one repeat. I mean, that is a minor league ballpark in 90-degree heat with wind blowing out. It's going to do that. So that game got a little bendy, a little bit ridiculous. It was going up to that. It was kind of a low-scoring slate early on, but obviously it went sideways with that one. A lot of people had that game in spots. Kyle Harrison, unfortunately, did not buzz his way through that lineup. We were debating whether he'd be able to do that, and obviously just a little bit of a rough outing for Mr. Harrison, but I think it was the right move to talk about him, to have him in lineups. I had him in the lineup that I share with my buddies in one of our season-long leagues, and we were talking about it after the fact last night. It's still absolutely the right move to have him in. You roll that game 100 times, he probably comes up about 50-50 in terms of really strong fantasy game with a bunch of Ks versus a lower-end game, and then a portion of those lower-end games obviously is the 8-run meltdown like he had last night. So not a great day from him, but a lot of good options that we did talk through. Some of the sneaky home run guys that we talked about picked up a little bit of power. So we hit some pretty nice spots yesterday. Daniel Pope had around 70% Logan Webb last night. He did good. Yeah, pitched deep into that ball game. That one went well. Cap says was over the lines by 16 with 160 on FanDuel. Went to bed 10-10 and assumed I was good. Woke up 15-14. Jesus. So I can watch it live and know when you're coming on. Profit everything I catch your show. Just a word of advice. The other channels I used to listen to let you know when a show is upcoming. Just a word of advice. I would appreciate it so I can catch it live and know when you're coming on. So via what mechanism are you looking at, Wayne, as far as the announcements? Because I do try every day to at least announce it on the Twitter channel after I schedule it. I know if you hit like the notifications, YouTube will send you a little notification when I schedule a show, so you can do it that way. I always drop it into the Discord channel for whatever sport too. So I do announce it, but if there's a better way that I can let you guys know that the shows are happening, absolutely let me know. A lot of the time, I don't have it pre-scheduled. Like I don't know what time tomorrow's show is going to be, right? So it's a little bit difficult just because it's, where did it fit into my day? What time did I start? What does the workload look like today? How difficult is the slate to, get situated? So there's some variability there. It's not, I'm not big enough, unfortunately, right now where I can, be company about it and say, all right, every day at 5:00, this is where we're at. I'm sure I could do it. A person with better time management skills could probably pull it off, but is what it is. Yeah, Harrison had to deal with 100 degrees outside and 17-mile-an-hour wind blowing out, says Cap. Yeah, we talked about that spot in depth yesterday, and it was just, what can you do? Wayne says, thank you. I guess it wasn't popping up. I'm subscribed to your YouTube channel. I don't get Twitter. Yeah, so if you're subscribed on YouTube and you allow the notifications, as far as I know, you should get them. Nothing from my end impacted on that. I don't have notifications from YouTube, so I'm not exactly sure if you need to do anything in your settings or whatever. But my understanding is it works. Daniel says, my wife rolled over at 1 a.m. and was like, I thought baseball was done. I said, nope, it's 14-14. Yeah, I was deeply invested in that Knicks game, obviously, and I just kept pulling up baseball scores, and that one just kept getting bigger and bigger, and wild game. But we could see that. We could see a similar game in course tonight, and those two dueling for the top. And then who knows? It being DFS, those two games will have 5 runs apiece tonight, and we'll have a 12-run spot somewhere else. But we'll get through it. Cap says the bell next to Rotoscouts. Make sure you have the bell on. It allows the notification. So click the note. There's a bell down there somewhere that you got to click to allow the notification. Appreciate you, Cap. Daniel Pope gets the notifications as well. All right, let's get into this thing a little bit here. We've got a handful of folks here hanging out. We'll get more piling in as the show goes on. And a lot of people, I'm sure, are going to be watching us on tape. A lot of us are going to be watching back the recorded version of this later on. So pitching wise, it is a fairly deep slate. It's another decent day up top. I think we're dealing with more of a offset high price tier for the high quality guys that are just highlighted right there. And there is a reasonable middle, a reasonable bargain bin, much, much more so than yesterday, I think. So you've got a lot more usable options in the SP2 range on DK in some of those dark green guys. Obviously, some of those guys are going to be impacted by those ballpark situations like Robert Gasser, 5,500, and he projects out okay, but you're playing with fire going into that environment in Vegas. So just be aware of those spots. Same deal with JT Ginn on the other side of that game, though he's been fairly effective. We'll get into the pitching board, the breakdown, but just wanted to throw that up there at the start of the show because I do think it's a nice deep board, and you've probably got a lot more high-low type combinations to work with on DraftKings than we did yesterday. Get into the run board, 9 games up. There's also an interesting 6-game early slate. I am very thankful that the sites decided not to go early at 6:30 and put a 15-game slate on our shoulders. That was what I was worried about, but that looks like a healthy early slate. If anybody has questions about that one, drop them in. Just do you like this pitcher against blah blah blah? I can pull it up. I don't have anything projected for it, but we can always talk about different spots in that early slate as well. Daniel says, I know it's slate dependent, but generally, how do you suggest to get different off of chalk and GPPs, different pitchers, fade chalk stacks, or mix in more hitters from the stacks, etc.? So I would definitely not say fade chalk stacks, right? That just is a recipe for just lowering your probability so significantly. And, what are you defining as who you're fading, who you're not? Is it just every day I'm going to take the top 2 stacks off the board? Just really reduces your chances. For me, it's always just more about the combinations. And that's where I think the DFS industry just back in the day kind of just misstepped, talking so much and focusing so much on individual ownership, where it's really very much about just the combinations of ownership, putting different teams together with different teams, pitchers, and what do those things lead to? And a lot of time you'll see commonality of construction, both from the mechanisms that people use being the same. There's only a few different sites that really do have robust optimizers, and if they're using the same projection sets, they're going to land in the same lanes. They're not going to have identical lineups because there's so much variability, and if they're doing it properly, they'll get a good spread. But it's very directional, right? So the projections are going to lead to similar combinations, and then within those, the sheer volume of people getting to those will cover so many of the different combinations. So that's where you want to get, you're not necessarily saying today, all right, I want to just exclusively mix Cubs and Brewers or Athletics and just play among the 6-run teams. You want to take one of those teams and you're taking, the 3 of the 5 best hitters at high prices from one of those. And then you're picking one of your alternates, one of your slightly less than teams, maybe not one of the big 4 on the board there, but you can dip down, the Astros at a mid-4s total, the Rangers at a 4.7, the Braves pulling nearly a 5, I'm sure are sneaking past some people in a very good spot against an opener and then Eric Fedde. So just looking for spots like that where you're not necessarily saying, all right, I don't want these teams. You're saying, I do want to get these guys, but who can I put them with that'll differentiate me just a little bit while retaining that high-end upside? And like I said, that spot to me looks great for that today. Hopefully it sneaks through. I'm sure they'll get a little popularity through that lane. And then once you're within that, it's, all right, what can I put together? And then who does that equal as an affordable pitcher with those combinations? So that's how I would typically build it. Like, say I'm building one lineup along those lines. I grab whichever of the higher end teams. What does it fit together with hitters wise from my fourth, fifth ranked stacks team, my less popular stacks team, but still high end? If you've got to go extreme value, obviously you've got a slightly different conversation about where you're pulling your second stack from. But it would be about the bats and how those hitter combinations go together. And I'd be looking to, grab one lower end or lower ownership hitter from either side of that combination, work them in. Hopefully it all fits positionally. And then I'm letting that kind of dictate who I get to with pitcher, which I think a lot of the time will just naturally get you a little bit differentiated at pitcher, because if you're focused on how the hitters come together and then just making that decision based on the money left over, it's going to a lot of the time, especially if you're going to those high-end squads, just kind of lead you down the board to a value guy. And within that, then you can make the decision of, all right, this dude is 7,700 super chalky value guy because he's pitching against a bad team. This guy's projected for 1 point less for 75. I can make that pivot, right? So it gives you the opportunity to just make a few very key, very small strategic pivots within the go-to options of the day and get a little bit different. It's not going to be incredibly contrarian, but it will likely be different than the mass combinations. And that's really all you need to do. Especially in baseball, there is so much variability and there are so many different spots, multi-position guys used in different ways. Baseball lineups just very naturally come together differently. I run sets of lineups where I'll dash off 15,000 lineups for a slate via my tools, and then I'll run a second set and I'll dedupe take the duplicate combinations out, including moving positions around, just purely looking at the guys in the lineup, regardless of where they're playing positionally. And you can dedupe 30,000 lineups and only have 50 duplicates. It's to that extreme that you get different combinations. So I really don't sweat it all that much. And I think a lot of the new tools, the Sims obviously are getting through that, landing people on different combinations and everything. But that's kind of how I look at it as far as like hand building, how to handle those big spots. Hopefully that makes some sense and helps a little bit. Hopefully that was at all coherent. Phillies and the Blue Jays topping things off. Interesting pitching matchup there. A couple of the class pitchers on the slate. It's Zach Wheeler against Dylan Cease. I think we're looking primarily at arms in that spot. We did talk about how the Blue Jays, pretty good squad as far as playing spoiler against a good pitcher. We talked about what they did to Chris Sale the other day, where it was only 3 runs, but 10 hits, kind of bends days at high prices. Zach Wheeler's tremendous. I don't worry about Zach Wheeler in this matchup at all, but maybe a little bit lighter strikeout proposition for him than in some other spots. Dylan Cease, major strikeout asset, but can get a little bit inefficient, can lose hitters to walk from time to time. The Phillies could exploit that, especially among some of their better hitters. More dangerous spot, I would say, for Dylan Cease than it is for Zach Wheeler. Both guys look tremendous. Both guys look like options at the top, and they do knock both teams down under 4 implied runs. So it's probably a day where you're looking Phillies, Blue Jays, more spoilers for the pitchers rather than go-to contrarian offenses. But those are 2 good squads if you're looking to be just contrarian for contrarian's sake. Cardinals at the Mets. Dustin May against Freddie Peralta. Another interesting pitching combination. Dustin May has been pretty good this year. He's finding the strikeout stuff in recent form. 2 back-to-back 9 strikeout games following a 7 strikeout game. Gave up 4 runs 3 games back in the 7K game. That was against the Pirates over 5 1/3. Wasn't the greatest start, but the strikeout uptick was nice. He's been completing 6 innings with regularity. Went 7 2 starts ago against the Brewers. 1 earned run, 2 runs total on 2 hits. Struck out 9, walked 0. 9 strikeouts, 2 walks, 3 earned runs on 5 hits over 5 2/3 against the gettable Texas squad was just an okay start. But just seeing the depth, seeing the K's come back for Dustin May, it's a nice combination of factors. Going up against a Mets team that's kind of middle of the road, plenty of talent in the team, but they tend to scuffle. They're at a sub-4 implied total. I do think Dustin May looks very usable here. And then Freddie Peralta, people tend to not love Freddie. I think he's very, very usable. On a good day, you're finding big time punch out numbers. On an average day, 5 to 7 strikeouts is not out of the question. And he's generally good. His worst days this year, he's had 3-4 earned run games. That's it. Those are his downside games this year. Other than that, a couple days where he's allowed 3, mostly 1s and 2s and 0s through the earned run categories. He is a very high-end pitcher. He's going up against that young Cardinals lineup, 3.62 implied total, one of the lower marks on the board, or that's actually the lowest mark on your slate. So there is upside for Freddie Peralta. Even if he makes you uncomfortable, that is a good option to embrace. Talking about trying to get different, a pitcher that people don't typically like becomes a good option. I believe he's, if memory serves, he's offset by price a little bit as well. Yeah, that's a nice, less expensive option than everyone surrounding him. Slightly higher projected than Eovaldi and C, slightly lower than Wheeler and Burns. And he's probably not going to get as popular, even with the lower price, just for perceived faults that aren't totally real. Keep that pitching board up on the thing here. So I like the Peralta side of that. I think May is entirely usable. It's another one where slight lean toward pitching, but I think both offenses usable at worst. It's only a 7.5 total. Those are not good implied totals, but there are good bats in both of those lineups. So if I popped up a Mets stack here and there built around, Soto upside, it wouldn't be something I'd hustle to take out of my lineups. I'd at least give it a look, but wouldn't be something I'd really go to rush to take out. And the same thing's true on the card side, especially with Lars Nootbaar back in the lineup. There are just some interesting pieces in that Cards lineup at reasonable enough prices. The Rangers against the Royals. Rangers looking like a decent enough go-to spot as far as one of those, slightly less than teams that could get interesting today. They're going up against Steven Kolek. Kolek has been effective in limiting runs in most of his outings this year. Had a 4-run day, 2 starts back over just 5 innings against this Texas squad. And then had a 5 earned run game against the White Sox back on May 12th. In between, he had a complete game shutout against the Mariners, a couple deep starts that were very effective, most recently at Cincinnati, which is a hitter park. 7 innings of 2-run balls, 6 hits, 8 strikeout game, which is a very high strikeout game for Kolek. So he's managed to put together some decent DFS days, but that total's interesting at 4.74 implied runs for the Rangers. They've got some power upside. He's a heavy contact pitcher. So at the very least, the Rangers are going to have an opportunity to pay off that total. They haven't been great at chasing totals this year, but they've got some of their better bats back, and they're definitely interesting. 4.36 implied on the struggling Royals side of that one. They're going up against Nathan Eovaldi, who, speaking of struggling, 4 earned runs last time out over 6 against St. Louis, 5 earned runs against Houston, but he did go 7 in that game, struck out 6. Another 3 earned runs over 7 against the Angels. 6 earned runs going back to the end of April in his worst start of the year. In between, had a few clean ones, has been working very deep into ball games. So it hasn't been peak form of Eovaldi. Struggling was probably unfair, though. There's not total meltdowns there. Has given up an uncharacteristic number of home runs on the season, though. 14 so far in 74 2/3. So just not peak form, but a lot of 7-inning games. He's completed the 7th 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times this year. Completed the 8th in a 6th outing, and then 3 6-inning games on top of that, and then the others a couple short starts. Pretty tremendous option going up against a very gettable Royal squad, one of the top projected pitchers on the board, but know that he hasn't been exactly pitching to form. But you can make some of that back with the depth. Grant Holmes on the bump for the Braves. Playable. We got to go back to the board. I'll see what the prices look like, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth. He's been effective this year. He's a more, effective than good, just middle of the board than ace type pitcher. Last time out, 6 innings, gave up 2 earned runs, struck out 4, walked 2, allowed a home run, 5 hits. That was against the Blue Jays. A lot of similar starts. Not great for depth. He's only completed the 6th 4 times during the season in his 12 starts. But 5-6 innings of reasonable quality against a diminished White Sox lineup is in play. 4.12 implied on the White Sox side. You can throw a few darts at the contact that Grant Holmes will allow there, but no, without the big guy in the lineup for the White Sox, it's a little bit different over there. You're talking about a lot of low strikeout, hit tool-oriented players. Going the other direction, Eric Fedde working behind an opener, definitely looking like a target I mentioned before, that near 5-run total. My hope is with 3-6 plus totals nearing 7 and one high fives closing in on 6. My hope is the Braves go a little bit under the radar here because it looks like a great spot to attack some Fede. Coors Field, 6.9 implied total leads the slate for the Cubbies. Ridiculous spot for them going up against Tomo Sugano. Colin Ray on the mound, maybe a little bit less targetable with the Rockies bats, but you can see a healthy 5.75 implied total for them. A little bit of thunder in that lineup. Ray has been pitching okay. 4.59 ERA is all right. A 4.29 xFIP under the surface is a little bit better than that. Moderate strikeout pitcher, entirely gettable, but the Rockies can be very up and down. They can feed a mediocre pitcher strikeout upside. Not endorsing Colin Ray in any way, but wouldn't surprise and doesn't surprise that the Rockies come in the 4th out of these 4 implied totals in the big games. Astros and the Angels, just 8.5 on the board there, but a solid looking spot. Kaiwei Teng, number of short outings, worked a little bit of hybrid relief, some bulk relief innings behind openers, some just pure relief innings, but has made now 5 starts in a row and has gotten stretched out a little bit more. Had a good 6-inning game against the Cubbies at Wrigley back 3 starts ago. Went 6 strikeouts, 3 walks, no earned runs on 2 hits. Gave up 3 to start after that in just 5 innings against Milwaukee, but struck out 7, walked 4, and gave up 2 home runs in that one, though, to kind of bend the start. And then last time out against Pittsburgh, gave up 4 earned runs, 5 total on 7 hits, struck out just 1 and walked 2 over 5 innings. So a couple short, not so great outings. I think that's just normalization around Teng. I don't love the option. 4.12 implied total on the Angels side with that power that they have in the lineup. Just 1-2 long balls can really break a day with that Angels team, but they do have some strikeout there. It wouldn't completely stun if Teng had a decent enough day at value, but he's not an upside arm. Walbert Urena has also been somewhat effective. He's found a few strikeouts in the last 3 starts, 7 last time out against the Rockies, 5 against the Rays, 6 against the Rangers. Had an 8 strikeout day against the Pods all the way back in mid-April, but everything in between was 3-4 strikeouts every time out. So a little bit of an uptick. He's also been good at limiting the home run ball, which I think is something maybe potentially interesting and maybe potentially limiting for the Astros a little bit more than that 4.47 implied total would indicate. But he's also a gettable pitcher. There are very good bats to go to in that Astros lineup, so they would be a strong contender for some of those. All right, grab them and pair them with one of the big popping teams today. Angels bats are in play, though. Reds and the Pods, sub-4 implied totals on either side of this one. It's Chase Burns. It's Lucas Giolito. Burns, pretty tremendous. Love the strikeout upside. Pitcher-friendly. Park helps as well. One of the top projected pitchers on the slate. No reason not to consider him. Even some more strikeouts available in that Padres lineup this year. Giolito been okay since coming back. Went 4 innings in the most recent one. Gave up 2 earned runs. Struck out 5. That was against the Phillies at Philly. It's an okay day in that ballpark, but a short outing. Went 5 in each of the first 2 starts back. Had kind of a meltdown over just 2 2/3 over on the 29th. I think we're probably just looking at 5 innings on Giolito here. So it's not an option I really love on the mound, but it is having an impact on those Reds. Another sub-4 implied total. They did not come through when they were looking, potentially sneaky yesterday. That was a miss from the show, but against this recovering, just figuring it back out version of Giolito, I wouldn't completely rule the Reds out. Again, it's a pitcher park. It's a low total. It doesn't look overly appealing, but that is not going to be a highly owned spot. And around bats like Stewart, Johnny Suarez, and so forth, JJ Bleday, Nathaniel Lowe, there's a little bit of potential against this version of Lucas Giolito. Nats and the Giants, decent totals, 4.23, 4.36. I think we prefer the national side, even though they come in at a slightly lower total. They're going up against Adrian Hauser. It's a gettable spot for them. I just like that lineup a little bit better overall than I like the Giants. And Andrew Alvarez is on the mound for the Nationals, having an impact on the Giants' power numbers. Could be just some small sample stuff, wreaking havoc. He's given up 2 home runs in just 20 1/3 this inning, mostly in relief work, and that's most of his track record. So it's a little bit different when you're starting versus pitching in relief. Probably should push a little bit more power toward the Giants, but there's no big indicators of success for the Giants here. 4.36 implied total is okay, but it's not like they've had a ton of upside games to go to, mostly struggling throughout that lineup. So that might be just a little bit of a trappy spot that just kind of falls into the middle. I believe anything from, a 3-run game to a 6-run game, but I don't know how many 10, 12 run days we're getting out of those San Francisco Giants here. And then we round things off with the Brewers and the Athletics in a 13-run spot in the game that went for 29 last night. 6.72 implied on the Brewers. They goosed this one up a little bit. 6.43 implied on the Athletics side. It's Robert Gasser. Had an effective outing the last time against San Francisco. I don't like his chances here. It's very cheap, but probably not. And JT Ginn on the mound for the Athletics going against the Brewers. Don't love anything about that spot, given the total that the Brewers have, given all their success at just creating runs. They do have some power in that lineup, even though they're not the most thunderous home run hitters in the world. Ginn has been good at limiting home runs in general. So he does have a slight impact. I might have to go back in after the show and just kind of put my thumb on the scale, give the Brewers a little bit more home run upside. They're pulling plenty, like Cheerios over the magic number, and I think it's realistic for the matchup. But that ballpark, that's what I was getting at before with the ballpark, is it's difficult to figure out how much impact from last night was ballpark versus just, quality of the pitching. But major go-to. Going to be very, very popular across all four of those teams. And with those teams soaking up so much ownership, in theory here, you're going to have light-owned spots across some of these better options. So I think that's just a real easy way to look at it is, hunt for those healthy mid-fours to high fours implied totals. Hunt for decent enough teams going up against bad pitchers. Probably not the best day, even though, again, it will be crazy, crazy contrarian, but probably not the best day to choose to say, I'm going to use the Blue Jays to attack Zach Wheeler. Like, as good as they can be, there's just a lot more healthy options that will be lightly enough owned that I don't think you need to worry about that. Wheeler, top of your board, I think believably so, projected very similarly to Chase Burns on both sides. Burns slightly outpaces Wheeler on the FanDuel board, but you're talking about, a couple tenths of a point on either site. Pick your poison. I mean, they're both similarly priced. 11.2 for Burns versus 10.9 for Wheeler on FanDuel probably pushes me toward more Wheeler shares, even though I like the spot a little bit better for Burns. Maybe a little bit opposite, 10.7, 10.5 on the DraftKings slate. Freddie Peralta, as mentioned, 89,000 really works price-wise from up there. He's projected basically the same as Eovaldi and Cease, only a couple few points behind Wheeler and Burns. Looks every bit the part of a capable ace with ceiling. No issues going to Freddie Peralta here. I wouldn't call it trust necessarily, but maybe faith. Like, I have faith that Freddie could give me a good start here. I don't fully trust him to, but I have a lot of faith in the upside. Eovaldi against a gettable KC team. Why not? Even though he's scuffling a little bit, maybe the struggling or perceived struggling renders him a little bit lighter owned than a 7-8 inning pitcher ought to be in that spot. Not bad pricing, 10.195. If he was fully on form, those would be perfectly fine. 10.597 for Dylan Cease. Going up against a really challenging Phillies lineup. I don't love it, but I would absolutely use Cease in that spot. He stands to show off a decent amount of upside. There are a few Ks to go mine in that lineup, but again, that Philly lineup can also draw the walk. They can impact Dylan Cease in some ways that are big negatives for him. Grant Holmes, I don't love at 88 on FanDuel on this board, but 75 absolutely in play against the diminished White Sox on DK. That is an interesting SP2 option. Dustin May is an absolute bargain on DK at 63. That's just a broken price. They have not noticed how well he's pitched basically all year. Like I said, the strikeouts have only been a recent addition coming back a little bit, but he's been just effective and good throughout the season. So that is a fantastic price going up against a middle of the board type Mets team. Really non-threatening Mets team. 82 on FanDuel also works, by the way. That's a reasonable spot. There is quality start upside there. It's just he's going to be challenged to really rival the ceilings of the other guys. It's going to depend on how many strikeouts those guys are going out and finding to create separation from Dustin May. But he's capable of paying off the FanDuel price. Lucas Giolito against those Reds. Again, that ballpark does a lot of favors for pitchers. He's not poorly projected for the money. Probably a much better DraftKings option at 7, though, than he is at 7 on FanDuel, just because we're probably, again, just dealing with a 5-inning day. Maybe a little potential for the win if his team can get to Chase Burns, but there's no real promise of that either. So FanDuel, you're really like doubly limited by probably not getting a quality start, less than likely to get the win. It's not great for the Giolito play on that side. But at price on DraftKings, it's a lot more on the board where 5 innings kind of works. You're using him as your SP2. He does have a little bit of win equity. So I would play it there, less so on the blue side. Kaiwei Teng, 85.66. Again, really separated site to site. Loosely usable, but I prefer some of the other options like Dustin May I'll go to every time against the Mets rather than Teng against the Angels for 300 more. I don't think that setup really makes sense. At 66, that's a very usable SP2, and there is a little bit of strikeout form in that Angels lineup. Gasser, despite the okay enough projection, the points per dollar look there. I just think the basement, there's a big trap door under him, and that's true for JT Ginn as well in that ballpark out in Vegas. I think you can bypass those two guys. I didn't want to take anything more away from them than the conditions already are. Like Ginn would have been a healthy 4 or 5 points higher in normal circumstances. I just don't think they're overly usable. It wouldn't completely knock me out of my chair if JT Ginn went out, had an okay day, limited the Brewers to 4 or 5 runs, but that's an okay day in this ballpark in these conditions. So probably not great. Kolek, just kind of a mix and match piece. 8,000, not overly comfortable on DK with all these better options at better prices as SP2. Doesn't really offer you SP1 upside. That's a challenging enough Rangers lineup the way they're looking today. One of the higher totals that's not in one of those 2 big games. 96 on FanDuel is a hard no thank you. I was at least polite about it. Colin Ray, no at Coors Field. Andrew Alvarez, maybe a mixer, but 72, I'd rather go to some of the cheaper guys. I just don't think there's a ton of there. Wilbur Arena against the Astros, I like him maybe to surprisingly limit the Astros to 4 runs and not a lot of power if he does anything on a good day. But the ceiling day is difficult to envision for Wilbur Arena here. Adrian Hauser, kind of a hard no, but very, very cheap on DK. Maybe a mixer. We'll talk about it when we get there. Fede, no. Sugano, no. Iser is the opener ahead of Fede. But it is a board with, obviously a couple high danger spots lurking right there in the middle. I would call those 2 guys kind of a trap. High pricing down here or, less usability, but a solid little pocket of value there. I think those are your more usable SP2s. What I don't think you necessarily have is a great option to go double cheap on the mound. It's probably Grant Holmes, Dustin May if you do want to do it. And that's awfully cheap. But you really need to get through all of those guys not having a big day. And that's pretty challenging with those names and those matchups there. I don't really like the looks of any of the other cheap combinations. I don't think it really works. But you do have value to combine with your top end, and there are ways to hopefully get it a little bit different. What's up, Joker? Why'd you go lay down, buddy? We got a little while. Handful of people here hanging out. Woo! 108 degrees outside in Vegas. That's tomorrow. That's fun. Kolek, answer the question. I had to pull it up here because I forgot why he was out. He was on medical emergency leave, but he's back. So they probably just had him out from that last time. And I think they wait to take the note away until later confirmation. But that would be why. I just couldn't remember whether he'd gotten an ouchie and come out of a game or whether it was leave. He was on medical leave for family emergency. So let's get into this one. Handful of people here hanging out. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel, whether you're watching live or later on in the day. Check out Rotoscouts.com. Everything's under $1 a day. Weekly, monthly, and quarterly plans available on any one of those plans. You're paying less than $1 a day for access to all 4 major sports. A lot of baseball, NBA, NHL for every single main slate, all through the playoffs for showdown slates. Knicks, a little bit of a letdown last night. Is what it is. There's always going to be a long series. NFL, once we get back to that, projections for every single game, every single Sunday main slate, but every showdown and Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, whenever they have football these days. It's a Wednesday night football opener this year for the season opener. Weird one. But we've got football, all kinds of content. I do very deep dives every single week in written content. Try and do shows when I can for football. Those get long, difficult to schedule. But we're going to try and get back on the ball a little bit with shows for those as we get to the fall. But check out the content over at rotoscouts.com. Promo code CubsWin, all one word, capital C, capital W, get you a free first week on a weekly plan. 100% free, zero commitment. Rotoscouts.com. All you got to do, if you don't want to continue, cancel it before it renews next week. If it renews, $7, $6.93 to get you from 1 week to the next. Pretty good bang for your buck. That's the goal, right? Our goal is to cater to the folks building a handful of lineups, not looking to spend hundreds of dollars on every single sport and different sim tools. Let's get into it. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Phillies, Blue Jays. I'm going to hit the lineups button, but I'm going to assume we don't have any of them because it's only 12:38. So again, monster pitching matchup here. Yeah, no lineups in. Not a surprise. Wheeler in his 8 starts has returned to action. 2.31 ERA, 3.35 xFIP, 25.4% strikeout. Looking a whole lot like Zach Wheeler. Just kind of vintage performances. Last time out, 7 innings of 2-run ball, struck out 8, walked 3 against the Padres, but dynamite start, just 2 hits. Has been working deep into every single start except for the very first one back on April 25th, my birthday. He went 5 innings that day, has completed the 6th at least in every start after that, has completed the 7th 3 times, pitched into the 8th once. So again, vintage Zach Wheeler, no issues with it. Just a low strikeout Blue Jay squad. They can be pesky. They can put 3 runs on him, and at those prices, that will bend his day. So just be aware of that. But it's looking like a good enough spot. 3.83 implied runs for his opponent and some gettable hitters. Dylan Cease, you have a little bit more downside with Cease. You also have probably a little bit more strikeout-based ceiling, 35.7% strikeouts this year, but 10.1% walks. You can see the 15.3% swinging strike rate. You can see even with that inflated walk rate, the tremendous, one of the top in the league, strikeout minus walk rate. So everything about Dylan Cease is ace caliber. It's just he can be inefficient. He can have some shorter outings from time to time. If the walks get away from him, he can put himself in bad spots, needs to amp up and pitch his way out of it. He's very good at doing that. 3.05 ERA and a 2.56 xFIP, 2.83 Sierra. So even better under the covers. But no, there is a little bit of lurking downside against a good Phillies lineup. Their best hitters are very capable of drawing walks. So far this year, you got 14.4 on Schwarber and 14.7 for Bryce Harper. Schwarb strikes out a lot, which could feed Dylan Cease upside, but he makes up for that with his just tremendous power. 23 home runs on the season, a 3.77 xWOBA, one of the best 3 true outcomes hitters in the league, actually probably the best. Harper is just good across the board, doesn't strike out, draws plenty of walk. In between those two, you've got a scuffling Trey Turner at 226, 279, 342 on the year. Not really drawing walk, but that's never been his game. He's been more balls in play, well-struck contact, and frequent contact. Right now, we've lost a little bit of hard hit. Barrels are right around where they were. Again, strikeouts are up slightly while walk hasn't increased. So it's just had an impact across the entire slash line over 287 plate appearances. We've seen Turner go through stretches where he's had downturns in the past and he's normalized things. That's the hope. But there's not a ton right now at 290 xWOBA to indicate that it's actually going to happen this year. Brendan Marsh, in years past, he's one of those guys I was referring to. A lot of ability to draw a walk. So far this year, just 4.7%. That's down from 8.9 last year, which was down from double digits in 24 and 23. So you just get a patient day out of Brendan Marsh. I'm not saying he's necessarily going to push his walk rate for the season back up to double digits by the end of the year, but I am saying that he's got the tool set to sit there and wait out a Dylan Cease walk in the right plate appearance. Also gives you a lot of batting average on balls in play right now, 333, 366, 514, basically the best he's ever been in terms of BABIP. It's really paid off for him. 142 WRC plus, but you can see there's about 40 points of separation between his weighted on base and his xWOBA. So there is a crash coming as far as the on base, the batting average goes, but he's a middle of the board type power bat, lefty to throw into the mix for a fair price at 4,000 at 3,100. That's a good Phillies bat to go to if you're combining options from this team. And that is one thing we do like about the Phillies. I mentioned it yesterday. Depth, a 9-man lineup does do you some favors when you have to reach, when you have to go down to some cheap pricing, when you need the 8 hitter. You get an Adolis Garcia who went out and hit his 7th home run of the season. He's struggled his way through the year and has declined badly over the last couple seasons. But there's still a lot of premium contact going on. 48% hard hits is actually up over the last 2 years. 8.8% barrels is down. 200, 274, 338 is obviously ineffective, But there's some good DFS days in there, and that's all we really need. And he's coming at a cheap price, $3,000, $2,500 across sites. Alec Boehm has mostly struggled. You do have him at a 42.3% hard hit rate, which is adequate, but it's down several points for him. 226, 285, 358. This is a 280-ish lifetime hitter. So Alec Boehm is really struggling. He's put together some decent games recently. He's not striking out. He puts a ton of balls in play. There is ongoing upside from Alec Boehm, and he's a part of the conversation if you're going to the Phillies. 32-27. He's super, super cheap for the skill set because he's got the ability to hit 2 doubles on any given day. He's less of a home run hitter, but he can drive the ball. He can get on base. He is another player who could wait out a Dylan Cease walk, although his game is, again, more putting the ball in play. Bryson Stott, another low strikeout option with a lot of balls in play, though he has also drawn more walks in the last 2 seasons, 9.6, 9.3 the last 2 years, down to 6.7 in his 224 plate appearances, having a big impact on the on base, on the run creation for Stott, just 275 on base and a 79 WRC plus. This is where, as deep as this lineup is in terms of name brand, the fact that everybody in the bottom of the lineup has been struggling for the year is where the Phillies' offensive challenges have come from. Top end of the lineup is mostly holding their weight. Real Muto is a usable enough catcher, 41.2% hard hit. You get a decent shot at one well-struck ball. Another player who could potentially limit strikeout upside for Dylan Cease to some degree, 18% so far this year, though it was mid-20s each of the last 3 years. Not a big-time walk option, but experienced player who knows to sit there and wait for a walk against Dylan Cease. Talked about Garcia, and then Justin Crawford, really disappointing rookie season. One of the hotshot rookies that came into this year with a lot of expectations, who's one of the few who was actually disappointed. 2 homers, 8 steals, substandard slash line over 200 plate appearances. I like his chances to eventually put it together, but might just need more seasoning, a little bit more time on the farm. Going the other direction with the Blue Jays at 3.83 implied runs against Wheeler. Wheeler's tremendous at limiting premium contact, limiting exit velocity, 87.7 miles an hour. A couple incidental home runs along the way, but it's nothing we worry about. And these Blue Jays, they lack firepower in a lot of ways as far as the home run ball. 13 home runs for Kaz Okamoto leads the team by quite a bit. So not a great option to target home run with the bats available, and not a good pitcher to go after him against, though he is a fly ball trajectory pitcher. Plenty of upside for Wheeler. The way that the Blue Jays beat him here is, again, probably a 3 to 5 run day where they don't strike out, they put the ball in play and find some success via BABIP, but don't exactly light up the board. It just bends Wheeler's day at those hefty prices. That's why Cease, on DraftKings, especially for 1,000 less, with the strikeout upside, that's why probably, even though he's going up against the more dangerous lineup, might be the better option for DFS over there, just because there's more of an impact. If they both have a 3-run day, there's bigger impact negatively to Zach Wheeler at the higher price. George Springer, top of the Blue Jays lineup, really another struggling veteran. Monster year last year, bouncing back from a year in which he struggled. We'll see where it goes. And there's nothing to really make me optimistic in any of his numbers across the board. The fact that he's striking out at 19.4 is not a big uptick from the 18% the last 3 straight years, so you can give him that. Walks are down slightly, but similar, so no real problems there. But the total abandonment of the premium contact continues. 5 home runs, 3 steals, and 200-plus plate appearances now. 202, 283, 343, a 301 xWOB under the 283 is at least, he's been underperforming, but even if he was at the 301 as his actual, that would be still almost 20 points below average. Not great. Still 4,000, 2,900. He's cheap for last year's version, but we're going on a lot of plate appearances around that year now where he's been pretty diminished. Nathan Lukes is at least interesting, 27-26. If he's hitting second, get him on base ahead of Laddie, ahead of Dalton Varsho, Jesus Sanchez a couple spots later. That's an interesting on-base correlated scoring piece. But again, we're not really looking to attack Zach Wheeler here, so he's probably less than necessary. Cheap as he is, good as a lineup spot as that is, probably not a guy that you really want to think about as a one-off either. Typically I'll call somebody out like that at those prices hitting up lineup, but I don't see the utility in a one-off spot for Lukes. Just a correlated scoring piece maybe works in like 3-mans. Vladdy's Vladdy. The price is way down. 45, 31, 282, 372. I'm going to actually sip this so I don't have to continue holding it. My arm's starting to get tired. That's better. Petting the dog with one hand, holding the coffee with the other one. Vladdy's just lacked the power. 282, 372, 368 though. 360 xWOB under a 330 actual. We just really slipped for barrels. Premium contact. He is struggling is not the right word. He's not struggling. He's not scuffling. He's not having a bad year. He's just a different guy than maybe he was previously, or maybe our perceptions of him were. 10.6% strikeout, 11.7% walk. If you're going to the Blue Jays, you're absolutely taking Vladdy. Dalton Varsho at 33.27. You're just looking to pick off one good piece of premium contact that he makes from time to time. So far this year, it's been even more rare than it was last year. 5 home runs, 4 steals. He's an effective enough DFS option if you have to go to this team, but there's nothing really appealing about this spot for Dalton Varsho other than the fact that he's left-handed. Ernie Clement, just a mix and match guy that you can put in for a little bit of BABIP, 309, 328, 473. He's been effective. He's also hit 7 home runs, but they're incidental. There's nothing about his contact that says home run hitter, never has been, never will be. Jesus Sanchez, on the other hand, is normalized to right in line with, look how consistent his barrels and hard hits are. 11.5, 47.3, 11.1, 43.4, 12.2, 12.2, 59, 12.2, 46.3 over the last 4 years. That is a very consistent bat. He's hitting for average this year. He's getting on base effectively. The power's down slightly as far as the home run pace. He's hit 6 in 200 plate appearances, primarily on the strong side of platoons. But there is more power in there. Any given slate, there's power upside. It's just terrible matchup to go hunting for power. But Jesus Sanchez is a go-to option in this Blue Jays lineup when they're facing right-handed pitching, and somebody I would absolutely roster if I'm determined to go to Blue Jays today, which I'm not. Akamoto again leads the team at 13 home runs. That's the nature of his game. 231, 311, 424 with a lot of strikeout. An okay walk rate, but we need to get into double digits against that strikeout rate to be a 3 true outcomes type guy. But a lot of barrels, a lot of premium contact. Andres Jimenez and Brandon Valenzuela just mix and match pieces down lineup. You do have 13 home runs combined between the two, so they're among the better home run bats so far this season for this team, but there's nothing overly realistic about that. Just happenstance. And again, bad target for power. I would say Zach Wheeler, Dylan Cease, Phillies bats, Blue Jays bats. The pitching a lot more on the board than the hitting. A lot more important to the slate. And as I was getting at, there is a, I think, bigger argument to be made for Dylan Cease at 1,000 less on DraftKings than Zach Wheeler, just because of the damage that 3 runs could do to Wheeler at that price. Joker, I need you to go lie down, buddy. We got 8 more games to go through. I know there's people working outside. Appreciate the heads up, though. Cards, 3.62 in play, going up against the Mets at a 3.96. Dustin May, again. For one, just look at the stuff plus, location plus, and pitching plus. We're above average in all 3. Not immensely, but a few points. Dustin May's always had pretty good stuff. He's putting the pieces together. 21.5% strikeout on the year against 6.8% walk. There's some effectiveness there. 4.59 ERA, but a 3.90 xFIP, 3.91 Sierra, probably the true nature of who he is. So we're dealing with around a high 3s, 4-run type pitcher. He's been limiting premium contact and power somewhat effectively. 6.7% barrels on an 11.4 degree average launch is just fine. It negates at least some of those well-struck balls. 48.7% hard hit, 90.3 miles an hour of exit velo. But if you can manage the trajectory a little bit, as we talk about a lot, it doesn't matter quite as much. 1.79% home run. You should probably expect a little bit of normalization there with that number to go up. Last year he was at 3.60 in 23 starts, but he also kind of bounced along throughout that season. Year before, he didn't pitch. Year before that, just 0.53, but that was only in 48 innings, 9 starts. But again, there is at least some demonstrable ability to keep the ball in the yard. It's having a little bit of an impact on the Mets' power numbers. You can see only Juan Soto above the magic number. And even some of the bats that we kind of like hard-hitting Mark Vientos at only 6.8. That's where some of the Dustin May impact, I think, comes in. What's really big on May? 6,300 on DraftKings. I talked about the recent performances. The last 3 games, 9, 9, and 7 strikeouts going backward in time. So he's found that again. This Mets team right now, this group of hitters, 22.5% strikeout rate. Depending on who's in the lineup, you'll be right around those numbers. At worst, you're focused on a league average type strikeout with some young up and down type hitters in it. This is a gettable spot for a very cheap Dustin May. And for 82 on FanDuel, again, he does work on the FanDuel board as well. It's a very good price. It's offset from the aces. Probably your strongest contender from that price tier. He's completed the sixth 7 times, including 2 starts back with that 7-inning start, 9 strikeout game against Milwaukee. Pitched into the sixth in 3 other starts. Has at least pitched into the 6th inning in every start since April 10th. 10 of his 12 starts. So a lot of upside toward the quality start is the point on the FanDuel board. Freddie Peralta at 9,089, striking out 23.9% of hitters. Too many walks from Freddie, too. He's got that same issue as Dylan Cease. 11.8% swinging strike rate. He doesn't punch hitters out like Dylan Cease does. So the walks can be a little bit more problematic for Freddie. That's where we get the lack of trust. That's where we get the downside days. 3.63 ERA, but a 3.80 xFIP, 4.0 SIERA. In truth, he's probably a four-run type pitcher, but he also probably has more strikeout to give us against a young Cardinals lineup with some fairly high strikeout guys that are offset by a few fairly low strikeout guys. It's an okay matchup for Freddie. He can get Jordan Walker, Nootbaar, some of these guys a couple times over. So I would go to Freddie. 89 on FanDuel works, but I prefer Dustin May at 82, even though there's an offset in projection. I'll take that price difference. 63 on DraftKings versus 9,000. I think they're just different conversations. You could probably roster them both and throw a blanket over the win, as our old pal Gundacker likes to say. Haven't talked to Gun in such a long time. If we're looking at bats here, I think we can probably say, well, actually, I don't know. Should we even say that the Mets are the better squad? I don't know. These Cardinals have been awfully frisky. A lot of interesting kids. They got Lars Nootbaar back. He's cheap. Lower total, but I don't know. Take a quarter point off the Mets, give it to the Cards, and let's even it out. Cardinals, JJ Weatherholt, 45-35, differently priced across sites. A little more value on DraftKings at second base. I don't need him at shortstop, really. I would probably take him if I got a really interesting looking Cardinals combination, as long as I wasn't sacrificing a really good shortstop option from the other team. Just better fit at a shorter second base and gives you the option to double up on high impact players. 9 home runs, 7 stolen bases, a decent slash line, a 117 WRC plus, just getting his career started. Ivan Herrera remains very cheap, 4,200, entirely usable, 7 home runs on the board, a 378 on base, drawing a 12.2% walk. These young Cards could give Freddie some fits with their walk rates, by the way. 11.4 on Weatherholt, 12.2 on Ivan. Burleson, 9.3. Ignore the Lars Nootbaar number. That's over only 13 plate appearances so far. But Nootbaar in his past has been 3 straight years of double-digit walks. Brian Torres is putting up a little bit. Nolan Gorman has always been a high walk, but also very high strikeout player. So it could be, that's how they get to the downside day. That's also how they get to the inflated total and some DFS success. The ability to impact the ball here against Freddie, somewhat limited. A little bit of fly ball trajectory, but only a 5.9% barrel, 40.9% hard hits. Decent exit velo on average, 88.4 miles an hour. So not the most targetable home run spot in the world. Even with some of the better bats like Jordan Walker, who's having a great year. 16 home runs, 10 stolen bases, a 303, 362, 560 slash line. Over 265 plate appearances. It's the real deal. Been telling you since before opening day. Going back to the last year before that. Jordan Walker finally arrived. 5,000, 4,000. Honestly, DraftKings, that price has not caught up. He should be 500 more. That's a bargain. Nootbaar at 35.28. Again, reasonably low strikeout, around average strikeout, but a fair amount of walks. Some very good contact from the left side over the last few years. 10-2, 50% last year. 9-9, 49.5% the year before that. That's a very good bat for this team to get back in the mix. 300, 462, 700 with a homer on the board. The homer came lefty-lefty, too. That was his, I think, 10th career lefty-lefty homer the other day. Obviously, that's a ridiculously small sample. If you look back to last year, just 234, 325, 361, a 96 WRC plus with a 317 xWOB. Obviously disappointed a little bit there. 13 home runs is at least somewhat effective. A dozen home runs, 7 steals in 405 plate appearances, had a 114 WRC plus off a 342 on base going back to 2024, showing some of the mixed, or not mixed, but across the stat line effectiveness. It's a multi-category contributor. That's an interesting bat at those prices. I expect that Lars Nootbaar is at least 1,000 more expensive this time next week on DraftKings. 45 is about right. A little bit higher on FanDuel as well. Torres, Gorman, Jimmy Crooks, mix and match pieces. You've got some upside in Crooks. It's a fairly high-end catching prospect. Nolan Gorman has always been able to hit the ball with authority, but again, a lot of strikeout offset by some walks, but not to an extreme degree. He's no three true outcomes guy. 279 on base isn't going to get it done, but that is a cheap dart to throw at third base or second base on FanDuel at just a cheapo home run, or maybe he's on base a couple times. Mason Wynn just overrated. Brian Torres, mix and match type guy, so far focused mostly on contact. Does have a pair of home runs, but it hasn't really come off of major contact. Low strikeout, high walk thus far. Another second base option on this team. On the Mets side, Carson Bench, 7 home runs, 10 stolen bases, a 110 WRC plus. He's doing interesting things out there. I think most interestingly, the 9.9% barrel, the 45.6% hard hit from the still affordable outfielder, particularly on DK. 3,600 is a nice price. 355 xWOB under the 326 actual reflects a little bit of the underperformance that you can see visible through there against the contact that he's made. 21.4% strikeout. If he could push walk, he'd be even more interesting. Bo Bichette, another player, another veteran with a lot of quality, just kind of going through it. He had a nice year last year. 234, 285, 330 start to his Mets career. Ugh, that is not what they bought. 7.4% barrels, 46.5% hard hits, mostly in line with previous years. There's nothing really about that. 3-point uptick in strikeout rate, but still well below league average, or well better than league average. Walks are right in line with where he's always been. So a lot of misfortune going on for Bichette here. I try and say misfortune instead of bad luck, because bad luck kind of implies like you hit the ball well and where you should have, and there shouldn't have been somebody standing there, but the outfielder happened to not even be paying attention and turned around and caught the ball. Where misfortune is like you hit the ball fairly solidly like you used to, but right at a guy. Misfortune includes just like bad results where, luck is different in my mind. But to that point, 267 batting average on balls in play this year. It was 342 last year on his way to a 311, 357, 483 slash line. So obviously a tremendous dip on where those balls are going, whether or not they're landing on the field of play or getting caught for outs, et cetera, et cetera. That does mean that there's the ability to, like that, just Bo Bichette's back and has a great rest of the year. Because there's nothing really going on here that you can like necessarily point to and say like, because of that, we're really struggling. So I do think that's a good option on any given slate. 41.28 has gotten very cheap for the skill set. You're talking about a guy who gets by just scratching out a few base hits and then finding correlated scoring ahead of Juan Soto, which is not a bad spot to hit. Soto, 13 home runs, 6 stolen bases, a 275, 366, 528 slash line, a 404 xWOBA to show the underperformance so far this year, even with that strong line. Monster premium contact, tons of walks, low strikeout. Maybe hasn't been as good as Jordan Alvarez this year, but those guys are like 1-2 from the left side right now as far as just pure hitters. Jared Young, 27-26, a usable piece. 3 home runs on the board for cheap. 291, 375, 509. It's been interesting enough. There are strikeouts on the board in his game, but he's drawn some more walks. Last year, fairly small sample, 34% strikeout, 4.3% walk. This year up to 25 and 10.9. And just really interesting contact. 17.5% barrel, 52.5% hard hits. Had a lot of barrels in the small sample last year. Again, this is 64 plate appearances this year, so don't get too excited. Last year it was 47. He hit 4 home runs over that stretch off of all those barrels, but you can see the total lack of consistency at 186, 234, 488 in that tiny sample. Put those two together and you're just over 100 plate appearances, which is still not enough. But it's a usable enough piece. I don't love that he's first base over here. If I use him, I would probably want him in the outfield like you can on FanDuel. Marcus Semien, 8.5% barrel rate, 8 home runs, 5 steals. That's the good news. Everything else that you can see there is the bad news. AJ Ewing, a lot of strikeouts, has drawn some walks, has had some interesting days, primarily like the first 3 games that he played. Home run, 7 stolen bases, is getting on at a 340 clip over 99 plate appearances. There's a lot of talent there. He's very fairly priced, 33.28. He can definitely get into some Mets stacks if you're building a bunch of them, but it's not a great spot to get to the Mets. Kind of just another outfielder, mixer, interesting young player to keep an eye on over time, but today, mostly just another outfielder. Vientos is a little bit more than that, just based on how he's always hit the ball. We talk about Mark Vientos probably more than anybody. He's only hit 7 home runs. He's been mostly bad throughout the season this year, but he has made interesting contact, mostly in line with where he's been in years past. So we know there's power there. We know that we can pick off a home run here and there. 17 in 463 plate appearances last year. Monster 27 with a good slash line in 450 chances back in 2024. He's not going to have that year this year unless things turn dramatically, but he's better than he's been, and he's awfully cheap. First base only on DraftKings. Third base is where I want him on FanDuel. Give me a bigger bat at first base. Brett Baty does give you decent contact from time to time. He's also slipped from where he was last year when he hit the 17 home runs in a handful of plate appearances. That's a interesting enough player at 34 on DK. You can consider him over Vientos on the DK just for the first base, third base of it, but there's $500 of price separation. He plays 4 positions on FanDuel. Luis Torrens just here to do the catching. Freddie with a little bit of faith. Dustin May, particularly on DraftKings, but also, very impactful value pitcher on FanDuel. I'll let Vegas have it and say Mets over Cards, but it's closer than Vegas thinks it is. Rangers and the Royals. Healthy totals on either side of this one. I think the Rangers are more interesting, probably likely to draw more fantasy ownership here. Coming at reasonable prices across the board, especially on DraftKings. Those are super cheap prices. FanDuel, it's more just reasonable with nobody above 32. DraftKings, nobody's above 44. And only Corey Seager is on that tier. The next most expensive guy is Josh Young at 38. It's a usable squad. They're going up against Stephen Kolek, who's striking out just 18.1%. Not really walking too many hitters, but he's not a strikeout pitcher. He's a guy who's going to pitch to contact here. There are some effective bats. Corey Seager back in the lineup. Jock Peterson has reclaimed his talent, at least to some degree, especially his ability to drive the ball against high contact righties. Brendan Nimmo is interesting from the left side. They got Wyatt Langford back in this lineup as well now. Another really interesting piece. Expect a little uptick from the Rangers going forward, but going up against Kolek, again, with all the contact he's allowed, it's not particularly Titanic contact. 7.1% barrel, just a 10.1 degree average launch, 38.1% hard hits, 88 miles an hour of exit velo, closing in on 89. The 3.36% home run rate is somewhat realistic, maybe slightly high for those numbers, but just given the volume of contact, you can see that in the stuff, right? 91 rating by Stuff Plus is ugly. It's more of a locator. But he's not a guy who gives up a ton of home runs. In his effective season last year, 1.95% home runs. There is some premium contact, but it was on only a 7.4 degree average launch. So you're not getting that home run ball out of it. Was just at 16.7% strikeouts, pitched to a 3.51 ERA, but a 4.39 Sierra 4.16 xFIP last season. And another good indicator, the 10 strikeout minus walk rate is not great. Even though he doesn't walk hitters, he doesn't find the punch outs. So all of that just adds up to a target here. I do think you could, argue in a vacuum, you could argue for Stephen Kolek goes out, has another, loosely effective day over 6 innings, only allows 2 runs, 4 strikeouts, something like that. But for 8 for 96 on this board, with all the downside that goes along with that spot, it doesn't really land right. I don't think that's all that usable. Nathan Eovaldi, 95-10, one of the higher projected pitchers on the board. 15% swinging strike rate, a 23.6% strikeout against just 5.4% walks. Very solid, 18.15 strikeout minus walk. He's pitched to a 4.10 ERA, but the real Nathan Eovaldi's more this 3.34 xFIP, 3.38 Sierra type guy. Last year, 3.03 xFIP, 3.17 Sierra. I would have said the same thing in the opposite direction, going up from the 1.73 ERA. So I do believe we're talking about a mid-threes type of run pitcher. Last year, he was tremendous in his 22 starts. Found more strikeout, fewer walks along the way. Honestly, or surprisingly, it was on significantly fewer swinging strikes last year. 12.8% rate is very, very good, but the 15% rate that he's putting up so far this year is actually elite. So if he continues doing that, there's a reasonable expectation that Eovaldi would find more punch outs along the way. He's also kept the ball in the yard. Well, he's kept the ball somewhat down, but not actually in the yard. That's been some of the downside I was referring to. Gave up an oddball number of home runs so far. Considering where the premium contact is, though, exit velocity 88.7 this year was 88.6 last year. Hard hits up a little bit at 40.1, but it comes on a 9.8 degree average launch, 8.3% barrels. Last year it was 7.4 and 9.5 degrees, and he pitched to a 2.02% home run rate. Year before was 3.30. If you want a little tiebreaker, he was giving up a little bit more hard hit, but less launch. I lean toward the guy who's been better at limiting home runs. He's definitely not the 4.5% home run rate pitcher. Probably mid-low threes is the realistic number. Some monster upside for Eovaldi. Hopefully he sneaks through just by comparison to some of those other pitchers at lower ownership. 22% strikeout for this projected version of the Royals lineup. There are some Ks in the lineup. In years past, they've been a lot more effective at limiting strikeout. Some of their better hitters have gone up a little bit. They've brought in some bats that are a little bit more high strikeout. So I think it's a somewhat effective target. I don't love that they're at a 4.36 implied total, though. KC, you're dealing with a 87 degree afternoon and a 15-mile-an-hour wind blowing out to left field, so something to be aware of for offense. Probably where we're pushing some of those totals up the board a little bit. That would be your negative against Eovaldi, is if the struggles with the home run ball continue. He makes those mistakes to a Bobby Witt, to a Vinny Pasquantino, even though he's struggling to a Jack Caglianone, certainly to a Sal Perez. You could see a couple home run balls land in the left field stands. But I think the upside outweighs the risk. I don't love getting too negative or too positive about those weather spots. Looking at lineups, if we're going to the Rangers, which I think we definitely should be, Jock is a big part of it. 8 home runs, a 347 on base, a 121 WRC plus, looking pretty tremendous via the weighted on base numbers. And he's put together a strong stretch. Had a couple light games over the weekend, but over 79 plate appearances. Again, moderate sample, but it's the recent stretch since May 15th. Jock Peterson, 273, 385, 591. Has a 415 weighted on base, a 371 xWOB is your more realistic number. 5 of those 8 home runs. 11 runs, 14 ribbies, if we care about counting stats. I think really interestingly, 15.2% strikeout over that stretch, 13.9% walk. Again, it's only 79 plate appearances, but this is Jock Peterson, at his best, reclaiming his ability to be at his best. He just struggled through the better part of a year plus. This is a guy who is a monster power hitter against right-handed pitching. So again, somebody who's going to allow as much contact as Kolek against some of these big-time lefties. Love that upside. 3,100, they have not noticed over on DraftKings. 27 on FanDuel, they haven't noticed over there either. Outfield first base, debatable. Jock can easily justify first base positioning, but you've also got Jake Berger later in the lineup, who remains an interesting option. 10 home runs on the board in 255 chances for Berger on the year. Some very interesting contact. A lot of strikeout, only medium walk rate. He's not the best, but he can drive one into the seats against Stephen Kolek here, and he'll have the opportunity to, because Kolek's not likely to punch him out. Corey Seager at 44, 3,000. Nice discount for the struggles, for the absence, 190 pretty bad plate appearances. Does have 8 home runs and a lot more ability than we've seen this year. At worst, we're still making very interesting contact. That barrel rate is right in line with where he's been the last 3 years. The hard hit rate is down, but that's the frequency rather than the ceiling, rather than the peak. Josh Young just having a good year, 313, 368, 487. Very effective, getting on base like crazy. Decent run creator at 141 WRC plus to lead the team, 41% better than average, probably a little bit better than decent. Nice and cheap at 3,800 at a key position at third base on DraftKings. 32, average price on FanDuel, very usable. 35 for Nimmo. Again, everybody's so cheap on DK. Nimmo's barreling the ball at an 11.8% rate this year. 50.5% hard hits. He's hit 7 home runs, 330 on base, 106 WRC plus. Most interestingly, I think for Nimmo, decent as he's been, 376 xWOB under that 324 actual. So everything adds up to only on the surface a little bit above average. But that lurking 376 guy, that's the Brendan Nimmo from a couple years back that has a lot of quality for DFS. Wyatt Langford, very high upside piece as well. 95 plate appearances on the season, just getting his feet back under him. Last year, hit 22 homers, stole 22 bases. Year before that, 16 homers, 19 stolen bases, and 557 chances. It's a pretty effective first 2 years as far as fantasy goes. Got on at a 344 clip last year as well. 14% barrel, 48.4% hard hit last year. That's a star in the making if he could stay on the field. So far this year, we haven't had the barrel, the hard hit in the small sample, and he's really struggled his way through. But give him a second. Any given slate, the upside is significant. 3,400, 2,900, very cheap too. Ezekiel Duran, just more of a mixer, multi-position guy. You want him at second base on DraftKings. Second, third base on FanDuel works perfectly fine. He's in the mix for some base hits, some batting average. He's hit 4 home runs, stolen 5 bags on the season. He is a contributor. He does fill categories for DFS. Certainly a usable piece, not a priority. He's a bolt-on part for this team. He's a fourth, fifth man in, not much more. Jake Berger, again, power, 10 home runs on the season. Evan Carter is more of a line drive type of a hitter, get on base right now, really scuffling at 172, 289, 328. He's been very skippable, but he's a playable piece. If you're building an abundance of Ranger stacks, you will and you want to have some Evan Carter worked in. And then our favorite cheapo catcher at the bottom of the lineup, 11.1% barrels for Higgy so far this year. 4 home runs in 113 plate appearances. We're pretty much on pace for him to come in around the 10, 11 home runs. 2 years ago, he had 17. Last year, he was back to 11. Years before that, it was 10 in multiple seasons going back in time. It's just who he is. Consistently capable of driving the ball with a barrel. The hard hit rates are very rarely intact. Decent amount of strikeout. Not that great for walks. You're just looking for one good batted ball event for 2,800. More playable on DraftKings than on FanDuel. Carter Jensen up top for very cheap in the Royals lineup remains interesting given the start that we saw from him. Right now at 213, 286, 381, including that start. Really needs to put it back together. 8 home runs on the board, 292 WOBA with a 267 xWOBA under the surface is concerning. But I believe in at least the power. And if we're getting bonus chances at it from the left side against an Eovaldi who's been giving up the power, if he's leading off here, that gives it a little additional upside for very cheap pricing, particularly where you need the catcher spot. Bobby Wynn's just a star. You absolutely want him if you're going to the Royals. 6,037 is not a misprice. It's just who he is. 9 homers, 23 steals, a 122 WRC plus with more to give. Michael Garcia, 45.29, very effectively priced. Not peak form at 266, 327, 378, 96 WRC plus, just a 321 xWOBA under a 315 actual. Has slipped a little bit as far as the consistency of hard contact, which has made him less interesting across all of those things. But this is a very good player who's low strikeout, medium walk rate, highly capable contributor across multiple categories, good extra base hit option, even if he's not hitting a ton of home runs. And Phil's second, Phil's third. Outfield also works on FanDuel. Third base on DraftKings. That's perfect positioning. Vinny at 39.28. You're taking the bargain. 6 home runs. Just ignore the slash line. 220, 306, 352. We're still going through it. 317 xWOBA. Where have you gone, Vinny? Come back. That is too good a hitter to struggle all season, though. And if you're going Royals, he is one of the better options on this team. Sal Perez at 35.27, 9 home runs, maybe exploits the power that Eovaldi's been given up. Caglianone is the more interesting option from down lineup, though, for that. 15.3% barrel, 59.5% hard hit. 6 home runs on the board on the season. Hasn't really matched the output to the contact he's made, but once that starts happening, look out. This kid is a potential star power bat, if nothing else. Very cheap pricing. 7.24 in the home run model against, it's got a long memory. If we were looking at just this year's numbers for Eovaldi, that would probably be 10 plus. Michael Massey has the ability to drive the ball, also fits in at second base at a great price, 3,000, 2,500. 6 home runs and 146 chances, not bad pace. And again, consistent output for premium contact. Not last year, but consistently able to find cheap premium contact from down lineup. Isaac Collins, mix and match piece. Same thing with Kyle Isbell. At best, just another outfielder. Rangers bats. Nathan Eovaldi. Royals bats. Kolek. If Kolek were cheaper, he'd be on the board more. Tall tale, Meech. What's going on, guys? Yeah, early show today, boys. Got some work going on outside these windows starting up in a couple hours, so I just wanted to get on early so we didn't have drills and jackhammers and so forth. Slate starts, I believe, what, 7 regular 7:05, 7:07? What is it? Probably 7:05. As I said, there is an interesting 6-gamer in the afternoon. 6:35 start for the 6-gamer. 7:07 start time in Toronto. 7:07, 7:10, 7:40s. And then we hit a break till 8:40. We get the Colorado game at 8:40. And then like last night, those last 4 games don't start until 9:38. So it's another late night with a handful of games on the West Coast. Granholm, 75.88. Usable, but again, particularly on FanDuel, probably a little bit high priced for comfort. He's going up against the diminished version of the White Sox, but there are a couple hit tool focused, low strikeout players in that lineup that are interesting. There's a very dangerous Colson Montgomery lurking in that lineup. So I don't love the spot. At 75, he's more of a player on the DK board. But again, that's just kind of a misfit price for the way that this slate comes together. I think he's one of the usable SP2 options, but considering the higher price and the meh kind of quality that you get, not a great one. 21.2% strikeout against 10% walk isn't great. 11.15 strikeout minus walk, 3.86 ERA, but a 4.27 xFIP, 4.39 Sierra is the real Granholms. You're giving up over the line contact for barrels, hard hits, and exit velo, resulting in a 4.46% home run rate. So even if you just get couple guys on base and one good batted ball event out of Colson Montgomery, it's going to change the nature of that day at prices that are just, around the average price for the value today and too high on FanDuel. Eric Fede is just a pretty hard no going up against this Braves team. The hope here, as I've been saying, is that we get the Braves a little bit more low owned than they ought to be in this matchup against an opener and then Eric Fede. For the season, 14.2% strikeout against 9.4% walk, completely inept, 4.7 strikeout minus walk, a 4.94 ERA, 5.26 xFIP, 5.17 Sierra, 5.12% home runs on plenty of fly balls. Even though the hard hits, the exit velo, the barrel rates are not over the thresholds, we know there are so many opportunities for well-struck fly balls for this hard-hitting Braves team that we should expect our home runs, and that's not a crazy outlier home run number for Fede. Looking at these Braves bats, 58.39 for Ronnie Acuna, who's putting the pieces together. 7 home runs, 15 steals, a 373 on base, 126 WRC plus. Not unreasonable pricing against this pitcher. And he'll be probably one of the lower owned stars from the high-end teams today. Again, these Braves, they're 4.99. That's not nothing. I know that we have 3 teams well above 6, 1 well above 5, but there's not so much daylight between the Rockies and the Braves as far as just the Vegas total. And there's way more quality in the Braves lineup. So we're just playing the ballparks now? Is that really what we're doing? Give me some Braves here. Michael Harris, 45.33. Love it. The sites have not caught up to his quality this year. 13 home runs, 306, 340, 523. Mashing baseballs. He leads the team in barrels. A team with Ronald Acuna and Matt Olson on it. And Austin Riley. 15.1% barrel rate, 53.1% hard hit. Massive gains for Michael Harris. He's a very low walk player. He's lowered his strikeout rate from an already better than average 20% the last 2 years down to 18.7 this year. So not only are you getting a major uptick in the quality of his contact, you're getting a bit of an uptick in the frequency of his contact. It's just a great option at these prices. I can't believe they haven't overreacted. 5,039 for Matt Olson, a little bit cheap on DK. That's arguably 500 cheap for his quality. 39 on FanDuel is correct. That's a 4,000-ish player. 17 home runs on the season, 267, 338, 539 this year, 139 WRC plus. Matt Olson's just been one of the best first basemen in the sport for a number of years running, particularly for what we're looking for here. Ozzie Albies, 49-32, 10 home runs on the board, a good slash line. 307 xWOB is the one concern under that 338 actual. Ozzie's never really squared the ball up all that great for hard hit rate. He did find more barrels in his best years than the 4.5% that he's gotten so far this year. I continue to think that, especially based on that xWOB, we're overperforming, but we've seen him do this for a full season in the past. So there's no reason to think that just because he's overperforming that it's suddenly going to come to a stop, if that makes sense. Mauricio Dubon, cheap. mix and match type player across multiple positions. You want him in the outfield, not at shortstop for the most part on DK. Second, third, outfield, they all worked for him on FanDuel. He's had a very good start to his year, has normalized pretty quickly, 260, 317, 414, but a 105 WRC plus. It's, again, an effective, cheap player. Dom Smith puts a fair amount of balls in play. Pretty low strikeout, medium walk rate, was finding the power a little bit early, hit 6 quick home runs in 153 plate appearances. He's got a great slash line. I would expect the slash line, the low strikeout to continue, probably trails off as far as any kind of pace of power output, but a playable lefty bat here if he's in the lineup going up against Fede as a follower. Austin Riley still making okay contact or quite good contact, but it's not the elite contact he used to make. 8 home runs on the board, a really bad slash line at 208, 284, 358, 80 WRC plus, a 305 xWOBA. It's another player. So where is he gone? I don't know what's going on with Austin Riley. I'm starting to get concerned because he's a big piece of the dynasty team, particularly with Aaron Judge out. We could use some power to arrive from Austin. Mike Yastrzemski, solid mixer from the left side down lineup. That's a sneaky player. Again, against a bad righty. If Yaz is in the lineup, that's a guy people won't roster all that aggressively. He can draw walks. He is reasonably low strikeout, and you can expect some well-struck balls. 10.5% barrel, 40.8% hard hits back in 24, 9.8, 44% in 23. Trailed off slightly in those categories, but those are still slightly better than average numbers. Has just been weak in his 184 plate appearances this year, only 3 home runs, kind of going through it. But there's upside there for cheap pricing, especially, again, if the Braves lineup is diminished in popularity, the Yaz shares within that are going to be even lower owned. So it makes it a quality spot for DFS. And then Sandy Leon, if he's in the lineup, is just kind of a mixer there to do the catching, but he's very, very cheap if you just had to fill that position and you only had 2,000. If I'm going White Sox against Grant Holmes, which I think is reasonable, 412 implied total, they're not going to get any kind of ownership. They're not exactly exploding up the stacks board by any means, but there are playable pieces. It's just the lack of Murakami that really takes the nice glow away from this team. This would probably be a 4.5 run total if Murakami was here. But Antonacci's been good. 44.29 is effective for guys getting on at a 386 clip over nearly 200 plate appearances now. Excellent 375 xWOB under the 350 actual. Kid's just very realistically exactly who he looks like. Going to be a high average player, low strikeout, a lot of balls in play. 6.6% barrel is fine for a player like that. It's higher than some of those players who do the exact same thing, but only come in around a 2% barrel rate. So there's a little bit of pop in Antonacci's bat. Miguel Vargas has to pick it up for this team while Murakami's out. He's hit 15 home runs on the season, also stolen 9 bases. He's been very, very good. 393 xWOBA says there's a little bit more to give, and this would be the right time to do it. 14.1% barrel. He's 55 4,000 with some of the other bargains that we've talked about. I do have a problem paying those prices for Miguel Vargas, but he's been mostly worth it throughout this entire 282 plate appearance stretch. So it's there. If you're going White Sox, he's a critical piece. 34.27 for Andrew Benintendi. Don't love that option. He's just a mixer, just another outfielder at best, but he's made interesting contact throughout the year. He's hit 6 home runs. It's a lefty to throw in against a mediocre righty like Grant Holmes. I get it. He would be a part of the conversation, but not a priority if I'm going White Sox. Colson Montgomery, the highest priority bat in this lineup, 9.63 in the home run model, 13.7% barrel, 16 homers on the season. Just mostly ignore the rest of the slash line. 348 WOBA is effective. Only a 326 xWOBA under the surface says there's probably a little even further decline as far as some of those average and on base numbers go. Might get a little dicey, but a 121 WRC plus, just a lot of strikeout in his game. But Grant Holmes, not exactly a light him up punch out type pitcher. Jacob Gonzalez hit his first major league home run the other day. 23 pretty good plate appearances. 30% strikeouts over that small stretch, but we'll give him time to normalize those numbers. Mix and match type player at first base on DraftKings, 2,300. Shortstop on FanDuel, 2,400. I don't love either of those positions for that player, if I'm being honest. I'd probably rather have him at first base. I just think short is such a thin position. I almost said short, and I couldn't think of another word. Short is such a thin position with some significant upside bats that I'd rather fill that, I think, with a different player. So probably more utility for Jacob Gonzalez on the DraftKings board. Tristan Peters, Drew Romo, Rico Nishida, mix and match pieces all. Tristan Peters has been interesting, 307, 365, 448 over 182 plate appearances. Just no real premium contact going on for him. Low strikeout, medium walk rate. Balls in play, but I would expect you could see some fade here, as indicated by the 299 xWOBA under his 360 actual. There's a massive difference between those two numbers. Braves bats, really interesting. White Sox bats because Grant Holmes is mispriced. Grant Holmes wouldn't play White Sox pitching. Our first launching pad of the show. Oh, hang on one second, guys. Somebody's knocking on my door, and my landlord's here, so I got to go answer it. I'll be right back. We're back. Sorry about that. Just wanted to make sure they weren't like saying, hey, we're going to start working right here, right now. They just needed to jack some power. I opened my bathroom window so they could run an extension cord in, using my power to do the work on the building. Wayne says, I'm glad you came on early. Yeah, because we're taking our sweet time through this one. It's a fun slate to break down and a lot of time to talk about it, so why not? But yeah, a lot of info to go through. This is a very deep, interesting slate. One extra game from yesterday. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We piled some more people into the chat while we were hanging out. Appreciate all you guys coming through the website. If you're not familiar, rotoscouts.com, rotoscouts.com, rotoscouts.com. Look at the bottom of the screen right now, scrolling across it. Free weeks available. Promo code is Cubs Win. Free first week on a weekly plan. 100% free. They were bought and paid for by Cubs. Celebrating his $10,000 victory. We've had several. I shouldn't say a bunch because that's misleading. We've had several from our small community 5-figure wins over the last 2 weeks. Guys are killing it out there. Love it. Get on board. Normal price under $1 a day, but right now, free first week on a weekly plan, weekly, monthly, and quarterly available. Those include MLB, NBA, NHL, and NFL. Projections for every single main slate. Deep content for baseball. Deep content for football. Check it out. At least take advantage of the free week. Not looking to steal your info, charge you, do anything. Just get on board. Check out the premium Discord as well. It's totally free. You don't have to subscribe at the website or on this channel or anything like that. It's linked down in the description of the video. Keeping on with the show. Tomo Sugano, Colin Ray. I don't think you want any part of either of these pitchers. I think the Vegas total should speak for itself here. 12.5 runs in this one, 13 runs in the Vegas game. Just stay away from pitching, particularly in this one. Looking at the bats. Colin Ray striking out 18.7%, allowing a 12.4% barrel, 45.3% hard hits, 91.3 miles an hour of exit velo. So we are dramatically over our thresholds in all three. Lucky to be at 3.24% home runs. It's feeding a little bit of power to Hunter Goodman, mostly in the middle of the Rockies lineup. 11.5 for him in the home run model. Everybody else, several points below the magic number. There's a little bit of lefty pop in a TJ Rumfield, in a Troy Johnston. We've seen Ezekiel Tovar be better for premium contact, better for power output. But what these Rockies are is a very frustrating, inconsistent team. They do, though, come in at a 5.75 implied total, and they will almost always be the lower-owned team in their home games. And Coors Field works just as much for the Rockies as it does for the visitors. You've got a much better team on the other side. It makes total sense that everybody wants the Cubs in this spot. 6.90 implied total, so they're running a quarter higher. 4 guys in their lineup are above the magic number with another 2 right at it in the power model. So yeah, of course, the Cubs are the more desirable squad here. But the Rockies have a little something going against Colin Ray. They'll be owned, but they're going to be out of the 4 big, just park-based spots today, total-based spots today. Rockies will be the lowest owned option. The obvious Cubs going against Sugano, who's a 13.6% strikeout pitcher. You thought Colin Ray's numbers I just read were bad, and I know you guys can see these. 13.6% strikeouts, 16.3% barrel rate allowed, 46.4% hard hits, and 91 miles an hour of exit velo, 415% home run rate. Yeah, he's lucky that's not like 7, 8. Ridiculously bad. He's had, I think, one good game on the season where he burnt us, where we were looking to target him. I think it was a road start. Which was the good one I'm thinking of? He was effective, not good on the road in LA last time out. 2 earned runs, 5 innings, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks. That was an okay day. There's the one. 6 2/3 at Arizona. We were on the Diamondbacks that day for sure. 2 earned runs, 6 hits, over 6 2/3. Only struck out 3 and walked 1, but nice depth, decent fantasy day. Couple of 2-run games prior to that. A bad 5-run day where he gave up 3 home runs to the Phillies at Philly. Just a very targetable pitcher for all the contact with all the quality in the Cubs lineup. Even when they're struggling, there are some very impactful bats for these Cubs. You get a lot of barrel rate. You also get a lot of ability to draw the walk from a pitcher who, walks aren't really his problem. But if he's just up there pitching to either contact or throwing balls, then yeah, there should be some upside for walks. PCA 56.38 now. Prices rocketed back up the board on DraftKings. FanDuel as well. He's caught fire, though. 11 home runs, 14 stolen bases. We've seen just utterly elite stretches from PCA. He just needs to keep it going consistently. But when he's at his best, that's a very good fantasy player. Leading off, numbers coming back together. He's on base at a 341 clip this year, creating runs 22% better than average. And this is after struggling at the beginning of the year. So PCA is kind of back. And price like it. Moises Ballesteros at 4,000 where you need a catcher, 31 where you don't. 6 home runs, a lot of premium contact available. Again, playing in Coors Field at those prices, that's doing you an awfully big favor on that catcher. He probably gets popular in that spot, though, with everybody flocking to the Cubs if he's hitting in that spot for 4,000 on DK. I would expect he's going to be one of your higher-owned catchers. If you get this configuration of the lineup where Carson Kelly's also in there later on, that's probably your sneaky catcher to go to. And Kelly's not bad. 280, 354, 357 slash this year. A little bit less power output, a little less as far as the premium contact, but a 107 WRC+. He's been a contributor. Michael Busch, not making the contact he did last year. Home run totals are way down, but still getting on base at a 369 clip. Keeps him interesting. 343 WOBA, 341 xWOBA, right on track. 120 WRC+. And the contact, despite being down, an 11% barrel rate is still good. That's still a home run hitter. 52.37. He's still priced more like the guy from last year, though, than this year's numbers. That would be the one impactful thing here. But it's a Coors Field game, so you take those prices. Alex Bregman at 48.34. Interesting batting Coors. More of a line drive hitter, but that's somebody who can absolutely succeed. Multiple doubles and some RBIs on the board for Bregman at a fair price. Ian Happ is awfully cheap at 49. 4,000 on FanDuel is the correct price. 14 home runs at 347 on base, a 133 WRC+. Tremendous ability to drive the ball. 15.9% barrel is team leading. 46.9% hard hit. A lot of strikeout, but Sugano's not going to find him. A lot of walk. Seiya Suzuki also fair amount of strikeout, but a lot of walk in his game. He's hit 9 home runs in 217 chances, 331 weighted on base with a 330 xWOB under the surface. And a guy who, he's delivered a little bit of power in the smaller sample size. That's on a slip of barrels. Once he regains the ability to find the barrel a little bit more, the power output's going to go up. 51.35 in Coors Field, perfectly fine. Nico, another player that, you can get away with contact-oriented hitters to a big degree in this ballpark just for the sheer size of it. So Nico's very much on the board to, potentially put up more than just a correlated scoring day. Correlated scoring and stolen base bonuses. You could have a nice big day out of a hitter like Nico Horner in this game. 5,000, 3,600. He's fully priced. You probably want him at second base more than shortstop just because of the high impact shortstops on the slate. But Coors Field also does go to a decent length to negate that. You can play him at short. Better Ramirez is just a mix and match option at second base, but he's the cheapest player by far on this team. So you probably end up getting him a little bit if you're building a ton of Cub stacks. On the rock side, Jake McCarthy, if he's leading off, mix and match piece, hitting for average, getting on base at a average type clip, 4 home runs, 11 steals. It's not that he's been uninteresting, but it's just there's not a lot in that line, and that line is him overperforming. A 337 weighted on base, a 308 xWOBA. So you can kind of see it for yourself. He's never really made good contact, never been able to consistently deliver that kind of a line. So mix and match piece if you're going to the Rockies, perfectly fine, but ultimately just another outfielder. The pricing on the Rocks, though, very, very fair. And again, they'll be the lowest owned of the 4 big spots. Willie Castro at 42-31, multi-position on both. You want him, second or third works on DraftKings. Where I don't really want Willie Castro, again, is shortstop, but somewhat negated by the Coors Field factor. 3 home runs, 4 stolen bases, getting on it a nice 337 clip. It's just a player who needs help from his friends to become super relevant for fantasy, a big score. Doesn't have a ton of really high-impact friends in this lineup to work with. Hunter Goodman, 2 spots later, is the biggest bat. TJ Rumfield delivering a 268, 345, 418 slash line, 7 home runs, a 330 xWOB under his 340 actual. He's been effective, but kind of lower impact. 15% strikeout, 7.1% walk, barrel, and 35% hard hits. He's okay, but he's not what I'd call reliable. He's not what I'd call, a big-time power bat to drive Willie in from first base. 53 on Goodman, 39. Their highest priced player, but if you're putting them all together, that's just average right out of the equation. He's their highest priority bat right now. 17 home runs on the board and 252 chances. 4,800 for Troy Johnston feels a little bit pricey. 33 with first base eligibility on FanDuel, but I'm already getting shots with Rumfield plus Hunter Goodman through the catcher first base spot on FanDuel. Util's in the mix. You probably plunk Johnston into the outfield more often than not if you use him. 314, 370, 430. He's been effective. It's Coors Field, 113 WRC plus on the year, but a lower xWOBA than his actual. Not too much premium contact to talk about with him either. Again, it's a guy who ultimately probably just another outfielder. So now you're just paying a Coors Field tax on DK at 48. He's oddly priced up slightly. Not that that's a high price in a vacuum, but for this team, that's kind of a little bit high. 33 on FanDuel is manageable. A lot of low-end options down toward the bottom. Like Tovar can hit the ball hard from time to time, but there's just so much swing and miss in his game that it renders him completely ineffective. A 48 WRC plus this year. Sterling Thompson for cheap, just looking like just another outfielder type option, but again, lifted by Coors. Kyle Karros at 3,000, 3 home runs, 2 steals, and 213 plate appearances, a 78 WRC plus. I'll say at least somewhat interesting based on, better than your light hitting contact type hitter numbers in terms of barrels and hard hits. Not exactly elite or even average, but more effective than a very light hitting option. Has a 335 xWOB under the 304 actual. So there's a little bit of the underperformance. You could see Kyle Karros catch on a little bit. Any given slate from the bottom of the lineup, probably more interesting than Tovar or Thompson. And then I run into challenges saying that he's more interesting than Edward Julian. Julian's at 216, 318, 294, delivering essentially nothing at that 66 WRC plus. But he's made interesting contact, 49% hard hit most particularly, draws a 12.5% walk rate that is characteristic of his previous performances. A lot of strikeout in his game, but he's been unlucky. 330 xWOB under that ugly 286 actual. Just not finding the success despite having the tools and using them correctly to deliver it. Cheap second base option with that skill set at Coors Field against a pitcher like Colin Ray. I will take a little bit of upside from Edward Julian from the bottom of the lineup. I would love it if he's hitting up lineup. That would make him ideal. If he was hitting, say, leadoff like he was earlier in the year, that would be a really interesting piece. But among the bottom 4 hitters, I'd say Julian's the most interesting, probably followed by Karros. Cubbies, Rockies don't use pitching. Both teams going to be ludicrously popular. Astros, Angels. Quality Souls here. What's going on, man? Good to see it. Says, so what's up, guys? Everything is up. Everything's going on. Clint Wood got a fancy new haircut today. I just get out of a haircut and there's a show. Astros 447 implied total. Angels 412 on the other side. 2 usable squads. Skyway Tang on the mound. It's Walber Urena. No real challenge coming from the pitchers. Tang 23.2% strikeout, but 11.1% walk in early action. 306 ERA, but a full run higher in the xFIP. The Sierra probably realistically who he actually is. Has been good at limiting premium contact. 316% home runs is probably about right. You can see below average across all 3 of Stuff Plus, Location Plus, and Pitching Plus so far isn't great. All 3 of those numbers do work in small samples. It's only 47 innings, 6 starts, and some relief work. I do think you give him some rope to see where it goes in the long term. I do think at 66 against a high strikeout Angels squad, there is some usability there. He has had a couple decent outings. 85 on FanDuel, I'm pretty much ruling him out, though. I don't think you get a quality start out of it. I don't think there's enough upside, and there's a lot of visible downside. Urena, 22% strikeout, 12.8% walk. Again, a problematic combination there. You can see the overperformance, 2.68 ERA, but a 4.27 xFIP, 4.53 Sierra. Probably, again, the more realistic numbers. But the impact he does have here, at least to some degree, 6.7 degree average launch allowed so far this year. Been really good at limiting premium contact. 33.6% hard hits is like elite. 87.3 miles an hour of exit velo. So I'm kind of a believer in that 1.83% home run rate from this small sample. Maybe it'll go sideways, but based on the contact he's been allowing, that is correct. You're still getting Jordan Alvarez and Christian Walker both persevering and cracking through the magic number. Jordan, one of the highest home run marks on the entire slate because he's ridiculous. 22 home runs on the season, just one of the best bats in baseball. I'll never stop saying that. 18.3% barrel, 54.5% hard hit. It's just him coming back to who he is. Take advantage. It's a great spot, even with the potential limitations of power. So we don't get our big home run shot, but we get a couple run scoring doubles and a 4-hit day out of Jordan Alvarez. I'll take that for DFS. Around him, Jeremy Pena is interesting for price, 43.33, particularly on DK. That's a very usable shortstop option. In the leadoff role ahead of Alvarez, dynamite. 3 home runs, 5 steals, getting on at a 356 clip over 132 chances. Had a really good year last year. 4,036 for Christian Walker is also good. 16 home runs on the board. We've talked about the strikeout numbers creeping back up on us, but a lot of barrels, a lot of hard hits, a true power bat, fairly priced at 36 on FanDuel. Cheap at 4,000 on DraftKings. Isaac Paredes, not the right ballpark to expect a home run from Isaac, but maybe a little low strikeout game on base a couple times, delivers some correlated scoring. He's playable, but I think it's less impactful playability than it is in home games or more favorable ballparks. What he is, though, is cheap at third base, 36, 3,000. That's very usable still, but remember, you're just getting more the correlated scoring version, the 331 on base, pick up a little bit of help from Jose Altuve, Cam Smith, depending on who's behind him in the lineup. Altuve, not great numbers overall this year, but it also just kind of looks like the numbers as far as the contact and everything that Jose Altuve has always gotten away with. So I would expect somewhat of a return to form over time. 243, 23, 83, just a 98 WRC plus. Nothing really reflected for that in the ex-Woba the Woba. It's just more kind of faith and seen him do it so many times. And he's correctly priced at second base, so it just doesn't really matter that much. Cam Smith, 27 across both sites. Excellent 12.3% barrel. We're waiting for those returns. 44.8% hard hit. He's delivered 6 home runs, a 223, 311, 359 slash line, and just a 302 weighted on base. 337 xWOB under the surface is more reflective of that contact than who Cam Smith probably actually is. He's also capable of drawing a walk, 9.9% walk against a healthy but not overly problematic, especially against that walk rate, strikeout rate. That's a good bat just waiting to explode. I'm convinced. I'm not convinced, but it's looking like it. Taylor Trammell, 2,600 across the board. We're 73 plate appearances deep now, and he's hitting 288, 347, 379. We talked about him day one. 107 WRC plus. It's just an interesting skill set for filling fantasy scores. He's never going to be a star. Not a big-time power bat, too much strikeout for the kind of player that he is over his moderate samples through the major leagues. Not enough walk for the most part this year, although he has walked more in years past. It was a formerly 5-tool hyped-up prospect, probably a quad A guy, but while he's here for such cheap prices in a lineup that arguably we want to get to from the left side against a pretty weak righty, that's an interesting player if you're going Astros. 6-1-3 in the home run model. I don't disagree with that. Jake Myers, mix and match outfielder. Christian Vasquez, mix and match catcher. 4 home runs on the season. From time to time gets into one, but there's nothing about his actual ongoing premium contact that would suggest he would. Just a low strikeout, frequent contact hitter. So every now and again, one of those is going to get over the wall. On the Angels side, going up against Teng, totally usable. Again, Teng has been good at limiting premium contact and just keeping this is a marginal home run rate at 3.16. Should probably be lower given the contact he's allowed, but overall that is still pretty good for keeping the ball in the yard. Probably his best attribute. These Angels can hit home runs against a guy like this. Zach Neto has 13 on the year. Mike Trout has 14. Both players kind of scuffling in terms of batting average, but both guys get on base at elite levels, 200 plus ISOs, 220 plus, 120 WRC plus for Neto, 134 for Mike Trout. We talked about Wade Meckler and his potential for being an average and on base type of a hitter when we looked at him yesterday. 154 WRC plus, doing interesting things over 55 plate appearances, comes in at 3,200. Ultimately, probably just another outfielder, hit tool based, on base skills based, low strikeout, medium walk. And there are a lot of outfield options in this mix, but he's playable for cheap. I just like the fact that Joe Adell at 36 on DraftKings, at 28 on FanDuel, is 400 cheaper on both sites, knowing what Adell's comparative upside is. Even in a year where he's been struggling to find the barrel regularly, 8.7% rate, 45.6% hard hit, he has hit 10 home runs in 277 plate appearances. This is not nothing. It's just off the pace that we expect. But that could come roaring back to life at any moment. Absolutely love the option with Joe Adell at those prices. Nolan Chanuel for 35.28, just a mix and match type guy whose skill set is getting on base, setting the table for hitters that follow. But then you run into Denzer Guzman, whoever the hell that is. I'm going to assume it's like Denzer Guzman. I don't know the first name Denzer all that well. He's having a monster year down on the farm. Forgive me, Denver. I was not familiar with your game. If this guy's in the lineup, could be a playable piece hiding down here. I don't love the fact that he's shortstop, especially on a team that has Zach Neto already at that spot. But that is a big price offset. Reason I'm saying maybe interesting, as a 22-year-old, promoted to AAA late last year, it looks like, was decent, actually pretty good, had an uptick in quality across his slash line in 153 chances as a 21-year-old in AAA last year. And then this year in his second season in AAA, 12 home runs, 9 stolen bases in just 268 plate appearances, was slashing 336, 403, 571, 136 WRC plus. 5 empty plate appearances so far this year, but had a cup of coffee last year. Hit a pair of home runs in 43 chances in the show last year. Nothing else over here is at all good. But given what he's done in the minors as such a young player coming up, yeah, not uninteresting if he's in the lineup at all. 6th prospect organizationally. These are probably a little outdated as far as some of these ratings. So Grissom and Adam Frazier both went to the injured list. Ozzy Peraza obviously still in the mix. He didn't get a start last night. He's not in the projected lineup here. What I'm trying to figure out, the quote that I'm seeing from Kurt Suzuki is that Guzman's going to be essentially the everyday third baseman, is what he says. And Moncada's been on the IL. With Grissom and Frazier both going on. You've got Nick Madrigal in this mix as well. But yeah, that makes him an interesting player. He's going to be even more interesting when he catches that third base eligibility. Madrigal, just kind of a light hitting guy who's never really totally delivered on the talent, but maybe you get a couple base hits out of him. Donovan Walton, Logan O'Hoppe, more mix and match options down lineup. Might be Ozzy Peraza spot instead of Donovan Walton down lineup. Astros, Angels, don't really like either pitcher, but it's probably Teng for cheap over Urena for a little bit more. Urena facing the better team at the higher total. Teng just nice and cheap on the DK with a little bit of strikeout potential coming from the Angels. 3 to go. Reds, Pods, Lucas Giolito, Chase Burns, low totals on both sides. This guy was once upon a time kind of supposed to be what this guy's doing right now. We've seen quality from Giolito over the years. Last year, 145 pretty mediocre innings, 3.41 ERA, but a 4.59 xFIP, 19.7% strikeout, 9.1% walk. Didn't pitch the year before that. In 2023, fairly effective. 4.88 ERA, but a 4.45 xFIP, 25.7% strikeout against too many walks. 12.3% swinging strike rate was interesting, but gave up too much power, too much premium contact that year. Wasn't really problematic for contact last year, but again, that was just mediocre overall. You can see the diminishment in stuff. This year so far, he's gotten even further down the board by stuff. Plus, he's allowed a 4% home run rate in his 4 starts, is 16 2/3, pitching to just a 14.7% strikeout in that small sample versus 17.3% walk. Swinging strikes have largely abandoned him. A negative 2.7% strikeout minus walk is, I believe, the lowest I've ever seen. 4.86 ERA, but a 6.29 xFIP. Again, this is an incredibly small sample for a guy who once upon a time was at least a little bit better than average. It amounts to a 4-inning start in which he allowed 2 earned runs, 3 runs total, struck out 5 at Philly. A bad day with 4 earned runs and 2 2/3 against Washington. A good day, no runs, only 4 hits. Just struck out 2 and walked 5 against the Athletics in his second start back, but at least he pitched 5 fairly clean innings. And then a 5-inning day against Seattle in his first start back, gave up 3 earned runs, struck out 3, walked 3. So with all the hiccups from walk, with the limited strikeout potential, with the fact that he's allowing a little bit of premium contact, a little bit of power, I really don't want to rule these Reds out. The ballpark's on the pitcher's side on both sides of this. 391 implied total is not exactly screaming Reds, although it's about a half a run higher than it was yesterday when they looked playable. There's just interesting bats here to throw at Lucas Giolito, who has not been good and probably isn't good anymore. JJ Bleday is one of those guys. High priced at $4,000 on FanDuel, a little bit cheaper at $51 on DraftKings, but those are high numbers. He's been great over 160 plate appearances, 10 home runs, tremendous slash line. We expect an eventual decline, but it's not exactly visible as far as the weighted on base numbers. 398 weighted on base with a 389 xWOB under the surface. So he has just been delivering the quality that it looks like. Blake Dunn at 36.28 to get things started, hitting for a little bit of average, getting on base ahead of the bigger bats in the lineup. Makes him kind of interesting if he's leading off. He's fairly priced in the outfield. It's a usable piece, but now you're occupying 2 spots with Reds outfielders in your lineup build. So get a lot of infielders through the rest of the lineup. 47 at first base or third base for Sal Stewart. Either way, 36 at just third base on FanDuel. You do get a little bit of back and forth conflict with him and Eugenio. You've obviously got the util spot, so you can get them both, but it's less than ideal. I would love it if Sal had the first base eligibility. Nathaniel Lowe is good, has been good, or is playable, decent for DFS, and has been good over 159. But to me, Nathaniel Lowe is a lot more skippable than Gino Suarez, even with the lefty-righty factored in. I want to have Gino and Sal in most of my Reds builds. Gino's gotten nice and cheap at 27, 4,000 on DK, totally usable. He's struggled over his 154 plate appearances, also missed some time kind of in the middle. So it's like short stint, bad, missed time for a big chunk, short stint, bad so far. But this is a guy who hit 49 home runs last year. Yeah, 49 home runs, drove in 118. I think Gino's going to get it figured out, and this is a pretty targetable spot for him to do it. Spencer Steer, good, 4,300, 3,100, multi-position. You like him at second base the most. Playable in the outfield on FanDuel. Loosely playable at first base. He's not bad. He can hit the ball for power. He's got 9 home runs on the board. Getting on at a 345 clip is great. 117 WRC plus on the season. I mean, again, just thinking about these Reds and what that total looks like and what the pitcher matchup looks like. Top 5 guys in this lineup over healthy samples, or healthy enough samples to at least talk about it, all above average run creators. And then you hit Gino, who we know is a star. He's just struggling right now. Matt McLain, who we know has more upside than this. On a good day, Matt McLain can deliver a home run, stolen base, score you a couple runs, and have a nice fantasy day at 34 at 28. Again, second base is probably where you want him over shortstop, but he has the skill set that he could pay off that shortstop value as well. Tyler Stevenson is an incredibly usable catcher. 5 home runs, but it comes off an 11.3% barrel, 43.5% hard hits. Those numbers are down from 14.4, 49.2 last year, 9.1, 43.9 the year before. That is lower than this year was, but he's always demonstrated the ability to put good wood on the ball. Very cheap catcher option on your DK board. Again, doesn't look like a good spot for the team, but that's now 8 pretty usable bats. And then we get to, in this projected version of the lineup, Edwin Arroyo, who we were excited about his promotion last week. Still at the dead min on DraftKings at second base because he hasn't really done anything interesting. 235, 300, 235. They've also got a lot of guys that they need to rotate through these infield starts. You may or may not see Edwin here, but he's an asset. He was having a great year before the call-up. Earned his call-up. If you weren't here that day, in 250 AAA plate appearances this year, 11 home runs, 9 stolen bases as a 22-year-old, 323, 383, 562, 240 ISO, just a 16% strikeout rate against 7.2% walks. Last year in 521, just at AA, he did not display the power. Only 3 home runs in that stretch. Stole 12 bags, got on at a 345 clip, 284, 345, 371 slash, 107 WRC plus. Even if he's just that guy, the guy who can get on base, be an ideal wraparound option from the 9 spot, maybe steal you a bag, provide some correlated scoring. That's great for the dead min from the 9 spot. But I'm more convinced about the actual like mix of medium power home run ability and uptick steals. Year before in 2023, as a 19-year-old at high A, 13 home runs, 29 stolen bases. It's just what his skill set is. Year before that, low A, 14 homers, 27 stolen bases. That is consistent delivery of those numbers. This kid's got the potential to be good and to be a good fantasy asset. Just because he hasn't done it in the 20 plate appearances we've seen so far doesn't mean you want to rule him out. Probably more interesting over here because he plays second base and he's so cheap. Shortstop, you run into that same problem I've mentioned several times. On the Padres side, these underperforming Padres have been problematic. 4,400, 3,000, not problematic for Fernando Tatis, though. Second base eligible on both sites is dynamite. I will continue to take that shot at second base. It's just that he's going up against Chase Burns today. 4,400 is cheap for all the barrels, the hard hits, even though he's hitting the ball into the ground pretty consistently or going the other way with it. He's at least interesting based on previous seasons, based on the 349 xWOBA that he's got hiding under that 301 mark that he's put up so far this year. It's just a much better player than we're seeing right now. That's a guy you want to be early on the return, not late. Jackson Merrill at 35-28, really bad this year. We got to go back in time. 2024, 130 WRC plus, 292, 326, 500 start to his career, 24 homers, 16 steals. Missed some time last year, but still put up a 116 WRC plus, 16 homers. Didn't steal any bases in the return to action last year, but had a decent slash line, 331 weighted on base with a 347 xWOBA. That guy's just been largely gone so far this year. Has hit 6 home runs, is running again, I think, interestingly for fantasy. 10 stolen bases. 265 weighted on base with a 322 xWOB under the surface, though. Premium contact has been fairly intact. He's lost a couple points of barrel, but he's gained some hard hit rate. So there's some misfortune going on here. Jackson Merrill, first 2 years in the league, a 318 BABIP and a 312 BABIP again on robust premium contact. This year on similar contact, 248 batting average on balls in play. That's something that is directly aligned to find a change. And we know how good this player can be. And the fact that he's running again, just again, makes him really interesting. Everything I'm saying about the Padres should be encased in the fact that they're facing Chase Burns, by the way. So this is not a good spot. I'm just talking about the hitters. Ty France at 31-26, 6 home runs on the season. An okay player, just a mix and match guy. Not great at first base. If he was like an outfielder, he'd have more utility. He's okay. If you're going to pods, he's fine. Manny Machado, 41-28. Who's been worse than Manny this year? Not many. He does have 11 home runs on the board. Did he hit one yesterday? I think he was at 10 yesterday. Maybe he did. Still makes at least okay contact around the average in terms of barrels and hard hits. It's the best thing we could say about this current season. 66 WRC plus, 306 xWOBA is significantly higher than 260, but still way below average. Gavin Sheets, interesting lefty at 3,000, 2,800, 10 home runs for him on the season, 336 xWOBA under a 342 actual. Interesting, 121 WRC plus, the ability to drive the ball, ability to draw a walk. Bogey is interesting at 37-29 if you're going to the pods already, just for counting stats, really. The reliability is not there, but the counting stats are. So you're just throwing darts at a home run, a stolen base, some run scoring. Bryce Johnson, Sung Moon Song, and Freddie Furman. Pretty weak down lineup. Everybody's real cheap for a reason. 3 home runs on the board for Freddie this year. Typically in the past, we've seen him hit for pretty consistent batting average and just be interesting through being on base from time to time. Right now, not hitting for any average. There's been a very moderate tick in power, but not a lot of contributions from Freddie at the bottom of this lineup. And again, all of that is going through the Chase Burns filter. Top projected pitcher on the slate, or him and Zach Wheeler neck and neck. 10-5, 11-2. Incredibly usable against the Pods with the ballpark on his side, with that 3.67 total on this side. All their struggles helping him out. Near 30% strikeout on a 15.4% swinging strike rate, a 2.05 ERA. Slightly higher 3.19 xFIP, 3.17 SIERA. Probably the real numbers when it's all said and done, but utterly elite stuff. Well above average across all 3 of those categories. Kid's tremendous. Fire away. Love the upside. This probably goes Chase Burns. Reds bats. Giolito, mostly on DraftKings. I don't think you want Giolito on FanDuel. You're probably looking at 5 innings capped. And then Padres bats probably bringing up the bottom. Whoops, can't skip that Nats game. So one everybody's here to talk about. Cubs. Roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. It was a pretty bad Doc Brown impression. Quality says, once the Reds tear through Giolito, is the Padres bullpen a problem? What are the Pods having the bullpen this year? I mean, obviously there's the big name at the back of it, but as far as the quality throughout, we don't talk about bullpens all that much. Why am I not getting my roster? Oh, because I clicked on the wrong tab. It's, if you chase Giolito from this spot, then you're talking about some of the long arms, like Wandy Peralta, who threw 27 pitches on Sunday. So he'd probably be fairly limited. Wandy this year, if it loads, pitching to a 2.37 ERA, but has a 4.61 xFIP under the surface. Doesn't strike anybody out. Walks too many. That's over 30 and a third. Last year, he pitched to a 3.14 ERA, a 3.86 xFIP. Year before that, 3.99, 4.85. Eminently gettable, low strikeout reliever. Just a long man. Lefty. And again, threw a solid handful of pitches 2 days ago. David Morgan hasn't pitched since last Friday. He threw 34 pitches that day. That might be your most likely long man. In just 15 and a third in the show this year, 5.28 ERA, 4.56 xFIP. 22.7% strikeouts against 14.7% walks. Again, very, very small sample there. He's maxed out at 2 innings in a couple different appearances. The 35 pitches the other day came in 2 effective innings against the Mets. He struck out 2, walked nobody, allowed 1 hit, faced 7 hitters, and pitched 2 clean innings. But I wouldn't say it's like problematic relievers coming in that are just going to, zip things up and completely shut the Reds down if they happen to chase Giolito. Got a 1.45 ERA on Yuki Matsui, but a 4.35 xFIP under the surface. Again, just plenty of strikeout at 27.8 so far this season in, again, a small sample because he's a reliever, 18 and 2/3. But it comes with a 12.5% walk rate. Last year it was 22.4, 12.1 in 63 innings, 3.98 ERA, 4.94 xFIP. So if you just look at like the bullpen as a whole, you got to remember the impact that Mason Miller's numbers have on it. The back-end relievers are very, very good. Jason Adam can be very good. Adrian Morejon can be very, very good. All 3 of those guys, plus Bradley. Literally the first time I'm ever seeing this name in my life. It's Bradley, but with a G between the D and the L. Bradley. I'm not familiar with this reliever. It's 22 and a half. 208 ERA, 384 xFIP. He's been pretty effective this year. Not a lot of strikeout in this game. That is a unique first name, sir. Bragley, if you're here. Love the handle. But yeah, ultimately to answer the question that was actually asked, not really a thing I would worry about. If you get to the long man, you've already probably put up a few runs, and the most likely guy is more than capable of serving up a few more. And they've honestly been fairly taxed looking at these pitch counts. 19 for Miller, 18 for Adam, 13 for Morejon, and 17 for Bragley last night. Night before, 36 for Marinaccio, 25 for Matsui, and 27 for Wandy. So again, it probably is David Morgan if they need to go to a long man. Like if Giolito's blown up in the third and they need somebody to cover like 3 innings, probably David Morgan. Let's talk Nats. Let's talk Giants. Adrian Hauser, Andrew Alvarez. Alvarez coming in at 72-73. He's made one start, thrown 20 and a third in the show. He's found a little bit of strikeout upside, a few swinging strikes along the way. That's a healthy 12.4% swinging strike rate. What I think is at least sort of interesting is maybe just some ability to keep the ball in the yard. He's given up 2 home runs in the 20 and a third. It's 2 home runs to 82 hitters. It's resulted in a 2.44% home run rate. It's on a 10-degree average launch. I'm not entirely sure that that's going to continue, though, because there are hard hits and exit velo there and a 9.3% barrel in the small sample. So it's going to really depend on where that launch angle goes. Last year in 23 and a third, 5 starts, 7.7-degree average launch. So you've got a little bit of support additionally, 1.02% home run, that it's realistic that he would keep the ball down and keep the ball in the yard. But we need a larger sample to say that that's actually totally real. These Giants, though, not big-time home run bats. He's having an impact on their home run numbers. Even Rafi Devers against this lefty, 4.32 in the home run model. Rafi's probably got a little bit more upside than that, but he's really struggling his way through the beginning of this season. 237, 291, 412, 8 home runs on the board. Was starting to look like he had rounded a corner. Maybe he has, given some uptick in premium contact, but it hasn't really landed on this side of the board yet. Long way to go to get to quality, but I think he eventually gets there. Just doesn't look like a great spot to be going Giants, even with that 4.36 implied total. Pitcher-friendly park, not a great home run opportunity. I don't know that Alvarez comes out and is this 27% strikeout guy, but there's at least some justification to think that he might be. Casey Schmidt leading off for the Giants, 44.36. Price has gone way, way up based on some quality performances, 251 good plate appearances, 15 home runs on some premium contact, big uptick in output for him, 348 xWOBA under the 364 actual, probably tells us a little bit of the truth. He's succeeding on a fair amount of contact, fair amount of balls in play, given that low-end walk rate. I think he's very playable if you're going to the Giants, but I don't think he's like a draw to the Giants, and I don't think he's an utter priority at those prices. Luis Arraez, interesting slap hitter who can, compete for a batting title, as I keep on saying, 324, 360, 431 this year. Just an interesting piece for correlated scoring, but that's all he really is. You had a big strikeout stretch here with Willie Adames, Matty Chapman, Bryce Eldridge right now has some strikeout in his game, some of the bottom of the lineup guys. So that's where some additional quality for Andrew Alvarez could come from as a cheapo SP2 on DraftKings. Maybe you could throw that dart. 73 on FanDuel, you probably don't. Going down the rest of the Giants lineup, though, you do have Willie and Matt Chapman from the right side. Massively underperforming expectations, I think is very fair to say. Chapman's gained a little bit in barrels recently, had a couple decent days. He's up to 250, 332, 373, 4 home runs on the board, hopefully putting the pieces back together. Willie takes a little bit longer to really normalize because he's so inconsistent, but he's hit 11 home runs. Maybe the power's slowly starting to arrive against an inexperienced lefty, even one who's keeping the ball in the yard so far. Those 2 righty bats, if you're going Giants, very high priority options. Eldridge from the left side, 28 across the board. Solid start to his career, over 99 plate appearances, 2 home runs on the board, excellent slash line, 129 WRC plus. Very high-end prospect who's just paying off his quality. Outfield only on FanDuel, first base only on DraftKings. Guess where I like him better? It's in the outfield. Susak, Barakoto, and Jonah Cox. Mix and match pieces down lineup. Cox, maybe if he's getting on base, gives you a little stolen base upside. He's also got a home run on the board in just 11 plate appearances. We're mostly looking for on base skills, stolen base upside out of that player. General mix and match quality through there, though. On the Nats side, going up against Adrian Hauser. Hauser allows a fair amount of premium contact, fair amount of exit velo. It's a manageable 11.2 degree average launch. That's up from last year's 9.3, up from the year before, which was also 9.3. 11.2 is more like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. He managed to get through with just a 2.7% home run rate in those 21 starts, 111 innings. But it's not like he was actually interesting for it. 4.12 ERA, 4.30 xFIP, 20% strikeout. This has been one of his better years. So with a little bit of additional launch, a little bit of additional shot at a home run for the Nats, spikes a little bit of added quality. 4.23 implied total reflects a little bit of that. You've got a star in James Wood, monster 25% barrel, 58.1% hard hit on the season. 401 WOBA with a 433 xWOBA underneath it. As good as he's been underperforming. 17.6% walk to support the on base, 158 WRC plus. Absolute superstar. 6,400, 4,500. Also one of the more expensive players on this entire slate on both sides. And this is a day with that Vegas game and a Coors game. 37-28, nice and cheap for Luis Garcia. 7 home runs, adequate slash line. The on base is concerning. 319 WOBA with a 328 xWOBA under the surface is not great, but he's low strikeout, fairly low walk. If he can reclaim even up to the 5% walk rate, he'd be a little bit more interested in getting on base at better than a 300 clip. He's delivered a good hard hit rate. He's a playable piece. Don't love the first base positioning on DK. Second base is where you want him. You get that on FanDuel. Curtis Mead's been really good over a stretch. 9 home runs was a very buzzy pickup in season long this week. I would expect among people who go to the Nationals, he's going to be pretty popular. More rosterable on FanDuel across second or third base for 33 than he is for 54 on DraftKings. That's a very high price. And if you're picking 2 of the $5,000 players from this team, it's CJ Abrams, it's James Wood most of those times. Abrams at 59, 14 home runs, 10 stolen bases, priced like a star because he's playing like one, 289, 382, 533, 154 WRC plus, another just high-end kid. Great way to fill short if you're going to this Nationals team. Dylan Cruz, high-end prospect who has not yet paid off his pedigree, 185, 232, 292, 2 home runs on the board. Mostly struggled last year, had some interesting counting stats in a medium sample. Which one is he? He's this one, right? 10 home runs, 17 steals last year, but slashed just 208, 280, 352 over a half a season, 322 plate appearances, 77 WRC plus. Bounced back and forth to the minors. Needs to figure it out, but he's making interesting contact. 10% barrels, 48% hard hits. 3,500, 2,600. I do continue to think that there's more than just another outfielder type talent there. We just haven't seen enough of it to really believe. But that's also why he's cheap. That's also why he'll be lower on than a lot of his counterparts here. Like Dalen Lyle probably gets more popular from the left side for 44 for 32. He's hit 8 home runs. Okay slash line, just a 98 WRC plus, 313 WOBA with a 320, just at league average xWOBA underneath it. Nothing to really write home about. Then Nasim Nunez can't hit at all, but can steal bases when he happens to be on. He has clawed his way over the Mendoza line, though. Congratulations. 201, 288, 223, 51 WRC plus. It's a bad player. Drew Millis, mixer at catcher. Jacob Young, mixer in the outfield for maybe a good batted ball event from time to time. No real consistency of quality batted balls, but he has pushed his barrel rate up. It's just happenstance right now in 219 plate appearances. 8 home runs on the board, though. Playable piece. I'm going to say Nationals bats. Just because of that interesting attribute of Alvarez that might or might not be real to keep the ball in the yard. Let's go Nationals bats, Giants bats. Alvarez over Hauser. I don't think you really want either of them. There's at least something of an argument to make for the $6,000 price tag, just if I can get through 5 okay innings for that price. You're talking about a 14% strikeout guy. So even through that lens, it's a really low-end option to even hope for that with, because you're not adding strikeout potential, so he can't erase, even 2 runs with additional Ks. Not a great option. And then your last game up, the game that went for 29 runs last night, monster spot again today with a 13-run total that may have gone up since we started this show. 6.72 implied on the Brewer side, 6.43 for the Athletics. These teams hit like 11 home runs or 9 home runs or whatever it was last night. A lot of power on board. We talked yesterday about this ballpark because it was a 90-something degree night. The wind was blowing out. It is a minor league park. It is at elevation. This is the second highest elevation among major league stadiums when it plays as a major league stadium. Lower than Coors, higher than Arizona, if you want to put it in perspective. So it's an absolute launching pad. And it's going to play that way again today. The things I talked about the ballpark, I think are interesting enough to bring up again today. In addition to all those features, this is also reminiscent of Coors Field in that it is a gigantic outfield. It's 340 something down the lines. 415 to dead center is a little bit, 7 feet deeper than Yankee Stadium, for example. 380 something in the power alleys. So this is a huge outfield. And you saw what they did to it last night. It's a 13-foot wall in left, and then starting in right center, it's a 9-foot wall. That's not exactly, the Green Monster or anything. But it is if you neutralized the various park factors, that would be a challenging ballpark to hit home runs in. But you just saw what all those park factors do to it. So while you're seeing decent home run model numbers here, you could go in and put your thumb on things even further and juice those home run model numbers a little bit. I didn't, because I think the Athletics are right about where they ought to be. And I think that the Brewers are not far off, given JT Ginn's ability under normal circumstances to keep the ball down somewhat, to do a very good job of limiting hard hit, limiting exit velo. This year so far, 36.3% hard hits, 87.9 miles an hour of exit velo on a 9.3 degree average launch. You can't really argue that there's a lot of home run upside in those numbers. Last season, similar in terms of the launch angle, but made some mistakes. Gave up a 9.8% barrel. A lot of hard hit. Was good on exit velo, though. 88.4 miles an hour of exit velo. Reasonably good at inducing weak and medium contact, but allowed the 4.34% home run just on mistakes alone. So that can easily burn him here. He's not reliable in any way. But if you look back to the 34 innings, the 6 starts the year before, it was somewhat reminiscent. Those skills are at least a little bit on display. And you can see the difference with very similar numbers here and here from those where happenstance just kind of comes up to bite him. That was it. So I think that those are about right. You've got Jackson Churio above the magic number. You've got Christian Yelich, his home run totals come and go. And then you get a Jake Bowers, who's a 20-ish, maybe more this year home run type. William Contreras, who's around that total. So I think those numbers in medium territory are not inappropriate to project, but know for sure that there is a monster home run ceiling in addition to what you're seeing through the model here. Hopefully that jobs. Hopefully that works for you guys. It's the best way I can do it. I don't want to go in here and make all sorts of changes on the back end that are inappropriate and just justified from one game and what I think might happen. We want to try and play in reality. But it's bats on either side. If you're playing a pitcher here, it's JT Ginn, but I can't imagine why you'd really want to do it. Brewers are just too good at run creation, even if they're not hitting home runs. They could go out and just create 12 runs without a homer. They're very expensive, justifiably so. As we talked about yesterday, it's very difficult to put, say, those 5 guys together. You get a couple cheap options in an underperforming Sal Frelick and okay Luis Renifo from the bottom of the lineup. 4,400 on Garrett Mitchell's awfully interesting given how he's been hitting the ball this year. He hasn't delivered anything for it, so there's perceptions that he's probably bad, but he's not. Given this kind of contact, that's a really interesting piece. He also draws a 13.9% walk rate, getting on at a 348 clip to offset any concerns that come from strikeouts. And you're facing a pitcher who's only an average strikeout pitcher at best, who does have a walk problem. So Garrett Mitchell's kind of an ideal option to throw into the mix at what will be high ownership in a vacuum, but lower ownership probably than some of his teammates. I think he's one of your best change things up a little bit as much as possible with these highly desirable Brewers bats options that you have. Embracing the low-end options like Frelick, like David Hamilton, and hoping for a stolen base and a run scored for a very cheap price downboard is how you probably get truly different with these teams. If you're doing that, you probably want to avoid the shortstop positioning on any one of those guys. Top of the lineup's obviously where you want to live. Yelich is a star, 4 home runs, 5 stolen bases, and only 153 plate appearances, getting on at a 353 clip, just the mold of what this team wants to be doing. Jackson Chourio, a burgeoning star, 305, 362, 484. Nice start to his year, over 141 chances after missing some time. Monster, 16.3% barrel, 48.9% hard hit. That's a big uptick in a small sample from where he's been over these first 2 seasons, but this is representative of the player we're expecting him to become. He might have just reached that level and will never return back to these lower numbers. This could just be who Jackson Chourio is from now on. I'm not saying it definitely is because it's a very small sample so far, but that's the kid growing into his full scope of talent. He is very, very good. Bryce Turang, solid 7.8% barrel, but that's already normalized to last year's number. If he can maintain here where he was last year, he continues to be interesting for a little bit of additional home run output, some extra base hit output. If he continues to slide back to the 2% barrel rate guy, he becomes more of the on-base correlated scoring hit for average type piece and would probably be mispriced at these monster numbers. In this ballpark, at those prices, at second base, you can get away with it, but those are very high prices. Willie Contreras at 51, where you need a catcher. Not bad. 6 home runs on the season. Excellent slash line, 113 WRC plus, playing in this ballpark. Monstrously beneficial for him as well. Easy go-to piece and a little bit cheaper than the other guys. I think Contreras may be a little bit interesting on FanDuel, where you don't need catcher just because of that differentiation, right? Maybe people just are rostering more Jake Bauers, more of these 3 guys, and Contreras falls off the board slightly. I'm not saying he's going to be low owned. He's going to be probably 20% plus over there. But maybe you get him, where these guys are 25, 28%. Maybe you get him at 19, 18, 20%. Slight discount. Go to the A's side with all the thunder in this lineup. 3 guys above the magic number with Langoliers, Kurtz, and Rooker. You've got Colby Thomas floating at a 7.05 with a lot of power expectations from him. So far, 10.8% barrel, 43.2% hard hit. Slightly down from a small sample number last year, but has major power upside. 2 home runs and 54 plate appearances, more to come. Rooker's underperforming on the season, but we like him for the bounce back, the strong second 2/3 of the season. Right now, the strikeouts are back up where they used to be. I expect he normalizes that at least to the 28.8 that we saw 2 years ago, if not the 22% from last year. He is still making good contact in terms of the barrels. 15.4 is up from last year, similar to the 2 previous seasons. I expect he turns it around, and you don't skip Brent Rooker against a lefty like Robert Gasser all that often if you're going to this team in a ridiculous launching pad of a ballpark. Max Muncy got back in our lives. This Max Muncy. I'll strip the A off since the Dodgers aren't on here. I've just got it in here so he draws the correct stats. Up on the website, I'll take the A off of there so it doesn't screw you up in uploading things. Nice and cheap. 2 home runs, 2 stolen bases. Had some effective games to start the season, but overall, not the best slash line over 109 plate appearances. I think where he was interesting is more in the premium contact department. 55.7% hard hit rate is elite. 34.9% strikeout is quite heavy, though, against a 5.5% walk rate. Up and down option, floated for quality by the ballpark, floated for quality by the matchup, and the cheap pricing. Probably gets a little bit popular, though. Soderstrom for 43 for 3,000, even against a lefty. I'll take the upside there. 10 home runs on the board. I would bet that he slips a little bit for popularity as compared to the big righties and as compared to Kurtz. Kurtz, I kind of blew past, but 14 home runs, an elite 434 on base percentage, ridiculous 20.5% walk rate. Kid's just this good. Take advantage. But Soderstrom, if you're looking for a lower-owned, cheap lefty, that's an interesting player. And if we could chase Robert Gasser and get into the bullpen, we get upside against a righty, all the power in the world floating for this team. Henry Bolte, still no home runs, but an interesting slash line over 85 chances. Upside for stolen bases, upside for power. He's a better power bat than he's been, as evidenced by that 55.1% hard hit rate, despite the total lack of barrels so far. Even if we're looking at him as get on base and provide correlated scoring, in a day where we might be expecting 10, 12 plus runs again, it makes him interesting. And he'll be probably lower owned than some of his counterparts here at a very cheap price. Geloff at 39.29. They left you some affordability on the A side of this thing. Geloff's a 2020 type talent. 7 homers, 6 stolen bases, solid slash line over 179 chances, just kind of getting back into form. He's got a 336 weighted on base, but just a 291 xWOBA. That shows you some of the overperformance. But when we're just exclusively talking about the counting stats, the things that score fantasy points, this is a player who's done that over time. 17 home runs, 25 stolen bases in an okay season back in 547 chances in 2024. You can see the bad player in the slash line right there, though. 211, 270, 362. We're just looking for this. We're just looking for those runs, RBIs, home runs, and stolen bases. But he's capable of delivering 14 and 14 in a good year the year before that, 133 WRC plus that year. So he's capable of delivering even more just ongoing quality. Right now, 3,900 at third base totally works. 2,900 second and third base eligibility on FanDuel. Excellent option. You would hope that he goes lighter owned at those cheap prices. He probably does gain a little bit because he's no secret. People know that Zach Elliff's at least decent. Alika Williams, more mix and matchy. Don't love the shortstop positioning. If you play him, it's probably at second base on FanDuel at 21. That's a very cheap offset at the bottom of the lineup. 28 pretty bad plate appearances this year. He had a minute in the show. Yeah, back in 2024 and 2023. Below the Mendoza line in 23, over 112 chances, 43 WRC plus, 47 WRC plus, but got up to a 207 batting average, 242 on base, 299 slug in 2024, then didn't play in the show last year. That's not a good bat. He's just cheap. Is what it is at the bottom of the lineup if that's where he's hitting. That does buy you something, though, if you're including him. Like, say you're, all right, I got my Langoliers, I got my Kurtz, and I got my, let's say I'm cheapening things up and taking Kobe Thomas instead of Brent Rooker. I'm at 3,567, 3,600 a piece across those three guys. So now I do need to save a little bit of money. I'll take the wraparound guy at 21 from the bottom. It averages me down to 3,200 per man across that four-man now. That still does include Langoliers, Kurtz, and Thomas. Direct correlation, the second, third, and fourth times, and fifth, and sixth, and seventh times through this lineup, if we go off like that, if he's hitting ninth. And it really has an impact on that average price. Same would be true if we had, Rooker in here, Soderstrom in here, etc. That does help you average the price down, helps you buy a pitcher, helps you buy a good option in a second stack, and would be differentiated along with that. Because not everybody's going to do that with Alika Williams. They're going to avoid trying to do that with Alika Williams, in fact. So that gets you different. He goes out and hit 2 singles and a run scored for that cheap at second base. Maybe it works. Shortstop kind of sucks on DraftKings. That's about it. Long show. Lot to talk through. 9-gamer. I think we did a pretty decent job. Hopefully some of it was at least helpful. 2.5 hours in. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel for me. Come back after the show ends. Just a couple minutes from now. Swing back through. Do me a favor. Leave a comment on the video. Just tell me, hey, dummy, you talk for way too long. We know most of this stuff. You're repeating yourself day after day. Tell me it was good. Tell me it was bad. I'm indifferent to what you actually say. Just go leave me a comment because it does feed the algorithm. Hopefully you like the content. Hopefully you check out Rotoscouts.com. Rotoscouts.com. Give it a look. Free first week. Just sitting there for you to go take. No commitment necessary. Sponsored by XX Cubs, who's in the chat somewhere, I think. Celebrating his 5-figure win that was one of several 5-figure wins the community has had. Our tiny little group here. Guys are killing it out there. Love to see it. So go check out Rotoscouts.com. Promo code for that is Cubs Win, all one word, capital C, capital W. It's scrolling across the bottom of your screen. Free first week on a weekly. Will renew at regular price if you don't cancel in between. That's only $6.93 for another week, so hopefully you stay on board. Monthly and quarterly plans also available there. NBA, NHL, NFL, and MLB. All 4 major sports are included in that. With that in mind, you guys, you absolutely rock. Stay tuned throughout the afternoon as we get confirmed lineups in. I'll be hanging out in Discord all day long. Hockey, there's a hockey game tonight, right? I didn't even look at that. That'll be up on the site. Yeah, 8 o'clock tonight. Game 4. Vegas leading 2-1. I was talking about it yesterday. That is a monster series so far. That's been a lot of fun. 2 high-quality teams. So hang out for those. Those projections will be up probably within the hour for the hockey game tonight. Give it a look. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. Share those results when you do. I'd love to see it. At Rotoscouts on Twitter or in the premium Discord. Free, linked below in the description for this video. Come join the community. Hang out with us. Let me know when you guys win. Go get them tonight. We'll be back for more tomorrow. Later, gang.